It is 7 p.m. and I would like to call this meeting to order. Can you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance led by the Shadow Mountain High School Orchestra? May I have roll call, please?
Mrs. Greenberg?
Here.
Mrs. Bacon?
Here.
Mr. Laney?
Here.
Mrs. Matura?
Here.
Mrs. Case?
Here.
Next on the agenda is approval of agenda. Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Matura. Items approved by consent will not come up for discussion during the meeting, but will be approved when the agenda is adopted. This is possible since members of the governing board receive the agenda along with backup materials at least 24 hours prior to the meeting and have time to review and consider all items. Prior to the agenda being adopted, members of the governing board or audience may ask that an item be removed from the consent agenda and brought to the floor for a discussion at the appropriate place on the agenda. I would like to offer the agenda as posted.
Does any member of the governing board wish to have an item removed from the agenda? Does any member of the audience wish to have an item removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, Mrs. Case, may I have a motion to approve the meeting agenda and recommended consent agenda items G1 through G13?
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is governing board statements. No. Mrs. Case?
Thank you. Thanksgiving is next week, and I wanted to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving, and I hope that whoever you're gathering with, friends or family, that you have an enjoyable time and a restful time out of school, and to be thankful for the many, many things that we have. I also wanted to thank the community for passing the M&O override. Thank you so much. I can't even tell you what that means to me. I've been through, anyway, thank you very, very much. And I just wanted to comment on that Shadow Mountain Orchestra. Weren't they good? I was so good. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda,
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I
I'm sorry.
just wanted to, I'm sorry, Mrs. Matura.
sorry, Mrs.
I
Bacon.
thought I gave you the.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Ms.
I guess I
Bacon.
didn't. I also want to thank voters and the many, many people who worked very hard to get the override passed. Many of whom are in this audience. Many of whom who have voted to help us, and the amount of appreciation is not small. It is large. So I want to thank you. I've been involved in every campaign since 2009. It's a little bit like Hotel California. You can check in, but you can never check out. And I'll probably continue when I am done with my board service to be involved in every campaign going forward. So thank you all.
Mrs. Greenberg.
Obviously, I also want to thank our community for their support and thank everybody here who walked and held signs and knocked doors and did everything they could. And I am extraordinarily grateful, particularly when you look at not every bond or override or question that was on the ballot from a school district in the state passed. Ours overwhelmingly did, and we are incredibly appreciative of the support. And I'm not saying this to one up what Mrs. Bacon said, but having worked in some capacity on PAC since 2004, it's really, it is incredibly, my gratitude is truly overflowing that our community comes together the way it does. So thank you all.
Mr. Laney.
So I wasn't going to say anything, but I do echo the comments of our other board members that I am really grateful for it. And being in this position, I see how necessary it is making the decisions that we need to make. And so I really appreciate all the hard work that everybody put towards that. So thank you.
Thank you. And ditto to everyone. I mean, it's a monumental effort that takes a lot of people out there and promoting and letting taxpayers know what this means to the district. And so thank you to everyone, boots on the ground, and all of our community for continuing to support our district. And next on the agenda is awards and recognitions. Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Matura. It's always a pleasure to highlight staff and students for success and or appreciation. And Mr. Droege will MC the honors tonight. At this time, I'd like to invite the governing board to join me in front of the dais.
Good evening, President Matura, governing board members, Dr. Bales, members of cabinet, and attendees both in person and virtual. Tonight, we have several recognitions to share with you. This evening, we'll be inviting our honorees to the front of the room for a recognition and a photo. Please make your way to the front of the room when I call your name. Our first honoree this evening is the 2022 AIA Division II Girls State Dive Champion. Please join me in congratulating from Paradise Valley High School, Madeline Narada. Our next honoree is a two-time 2022 AIA Division III Girls State Swim Champion in both the 200-yard and 500-yard freestyle. Please join me in a round of applause for Danielle Gleason from Shadow Mountain High School. Next, we have the 2022 Arizona Association of School Psychologists Administrator of the Year Award. School psychologists in our district provide a wide range of services, including collaborating with parents, administrators, teachers, instructional assistants, and other school personnel. Please welcome tonight's honoree, lead psychologist, Suzanne O'Day. And our next recognition is the recipient of the Paradise Valley Education Association's Recognition of Professional Standards Award for Teachers. The honoree will be introduced this evening by Ms. Susie Seep, PVEA President.
Thank you. Good evening, President Matura, Governing Board, Dr. Bales, and Cabinet. Tonight we are honoring Scott Roper, the music teacher at Indian Bend Elementary. He's incredible. He's in his 29th year of teaching, the 27th year in this district. He's taught elementary general music at Desert Cove, Copper Canyon, Village Vista, Sandpiper, and Indian Bend. He's also taught at the college level for 20 years and is in his 10th year at IBES. His 3 children all attended PV schools, although he lives outside the other district, so I hope you know, like that's the favorite kind. He dabbles in composing music and creates original songs and rhythm verses to teach rhythm patterns in class. He did send me a song about toucans. I wish I could sing again. Anita Kreider, the strings teacher at his school, sent this nomination. She said, Scott is the music teacher at Indian Bend, and he deserves being acknowledged. He's one of the most selfless humans she knows. He knows about every student at the school, and they genuinely love him. The positive relationships he has with his students are based on mutual trust and respect. While she was recruiting in Indian Bend, he was supportive by not only inviting him to his classroom, sharing information with students, and explaining the benefits of playing instruments. He even took his own class time to show videos demonstrating various instruments, helped him distribute and collect registration forms. While she was overwhelmed in the first few months, returning to teaching strings at 4 schools, which is hard, he was always there to check in frequently, see how he could help. He's a team player, he works hard and cares. Another colleague said that Scott is committed to Indian Bend and always one of the first people to step up and offer support and help. He does community activities such as conferences, Title I nights, family picnics. He makes sure to fill the air with music. He has an incredible chorus program, the Thunderbird Singers. He's an active member of PBIS and committed to spreading positivity throughout the campus. He's continuously developing his repertoire of knowledge and best practices. We value his dedication and commitment. Our school is enriched by his presence. I'm so proud to have someone like Scott Roper as a colleague, and I'm so pleased that he was able to be here tonight with so many of his colleagues. Scott.
And that, President Matura, concludes this evening's awards and recognitions.
Next on the agenda is call to the public.
Call to the public is about to convene. This portion of today's meeting allows the public the opportunity to address the governing board. Although state law does not require that the governing board hold a call to the public, the Paradise Valley Unified School District and its board have chosen to do so because we believe it's important to hear about concerns and issues from our community. While call to the public is not designed to be a discussion, the board is here to listen. Due to Arizona open meeting law, the governing board cannot respond to, discuss, or take any action on items brought up during this time. However, staff members may be directed to get back to you and address individual concerns. As a reminder, the point of this and every board meeting is to accomplish the business at hand, and to be able to do so in an open and collaborative way. All in attendance are expected to observe meeting rules, as well as rules of politeness and decorum, so that we may serve as an example to our students that issues can be discussed in a respectful and civil manner.
Tonight, we have 32 comment cards. We have 5 for call to the public and 27 for agenda items. These are all people who have submitted comment cards prior to the start of the meeting. Each speaker will have 2 minutes for remarks. Those who have asked to speak on agenda items will be recognized at the appropriate time during the meeting. Please remember to state your first and last name when you come to the podium. Our first speaker will be Jennifer Ariza, and our second speaker will be Susan Seat.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Ariza, and I want to say thank you to each of the board members for all the time that you put into your positions. I know it's personally difficult to make each one of these meetings, so I appreciate everything that you do. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. My concern as a parent in the district is the education and welfare of our students. As I stand here tonight, I want to declare that pornography should not be allowed in our schools. I know there are some people on the board who do not see an issue with approving materials that contain pornographic or sexualized material. And you may question why I come to these meetings to make this declaration. And it's really for the benefit of the teachers, the students, and the community. I normally talk about the effects of pornography on children, which are dire. Tonight, I want to highlight some of what is going on with educators. There was an article published last month on October 14th, and I'm just going to read some of it here for you. The title of the article says, "At least 269 K-12 educators arrested on child sex crimes since January." Nearly 270 public educators were arrested on child sex-related crimes in the U.S. in the first 9 months of this year, ranging from grooming to raping underage students. An analysis conducted found that from January 1st to September 30th, at least 269 educators were arrested, which works out to roughly 1 arrest a day. The 269 educators included 4 principals, 2 assistant principals, 226 teachers, 20 teachers, aides, and 17 substitute teachers. At least 199 of the arrests, or 74%, involved alleged crimes against students. The analysis looked at local news stories week by week featuring arrests of K-12 principals, assistant principals, teachers, substitute teachers, and teachers' aides on child sex-related crimes in school districts across the country. Arrests that were not publicized were not counted in the analysis, meaning the true number may well be higher.
Next up, we have Susan Seep, followed by Catherine Lashinsky.
Good evening again, President Matura, Governing Board, Dr. Bales, and Cabinet. I'm going to try and cut it to 2 minutes. We'll see how I do. I want to start with the heart of the bargaining agreement, which says that the board recognizes that teaching is a profession with specialized qualifications and that their participation in policy development is important to the success of school programs. The board and association recognize their responsibilities toward each other and to the community for bargaining in good faith to reach agreements which are mutually acceptable. In Paradise, everyone recognizes each other's interests by carefully following a process. PVUSD is a process for everything in this district and has relied on it for decades to do what's best for kids. Stepping away from the process makes it hard to maintain the trust in each other and even harder to maintain credibility with the people we are doing this work for, the students, the employees, and the community. When the board was informed of the budget shortfall in June, everyone celebrated the transparency which was brought to the community. Unfortunately, task force members were directed to keep the conversation in the room and not loop out to our exec boards and members for feedback. I honestly regret agreeing to that, and I apologize to all PVA members and leaders. The mantra of the PVA president and ombudsman is don't make a single decision alone. Rely on your board, your council of reps, and your members. Everything that PVA has built, written, and relied on leans into that intention. I wish I'd remembered that. Cooperation means everyone working to the same end. Certified members of Budget Task Force believed that was the task. We believed that the district saw our commitment to take our responsibilities to everyone in the district seriously, to have a healthy budget, respected leadership, and successful classrooms. We believed in the board, and we believed that they would send us back to the table for more discussion. I'm going to quote from policy. The process is dependent on mutual understanding, cooperation, and good faith. It therefore requires a free and open exchange of views with all parties participating in deliberations leading to an agreement. I believe we can move forward. I will ask that you respect our professionalism and believe in us again.
Good evening, Governing Board. Thank you for letting me speak. At one time, I probably would be speaking as a teacher, but now I'm just a community member. I urge you to take great caution with the decisions you make regarding teacher salary and teacher workplace. I'm a former PVUSD teacher who is also a product of the district. I went to Sandpiper, Desert Shadows, and Horizon. I did my undergraduate work at Lehigh University, and then after completing my master's degree in education at Pepperdine, I was extremely proud to come back and work at Paradise Valley. No one goes into teaching for the paycheck. They go into teaching for the students to make a difference in their lives. I absolutely love teaching. I'd like to think I was pretty good at it too, but I never dreamed I would struggle as much as I did. I struggled mentally, not to mention the financial struggle I endured for my entire 15-year career in this district. I worked for 10 years before I saw a comma in my paycheck, a comma, and I had a master's degree. I felt like I was failing as an adult. I had a great education. I loved what I did, yet I struggled to make ends meet, paycheck after paycheck, year after year. I would never have been able to buy my house as an adult if it weren't for having a roommate and my supportive parents. And yet there were Augusts, then they would roll around and that summer paycheck was running out, and I couldn't pay my electric bill and my mortgage. Having to make the choice between paying my mortgage on time or paying my electric bill on time was absolutely humiliating in my 30s and 40s. Going to my own parents for help to pay my bills was the last thing I wanted to be doing. After all, shouldn't I be helping them? I prayed that nothing would happen to my car. I knew I couldn't afford to fix it. Those performance-based paychecks, every time they went to bills. My car, my house. I never took a vacation or did something fun with it. It was useful. You will be hard pressed to find a teacher in this district that just teaches. If there's an addendum for extra money with extra work, you don't have trouble finding teachers to do that work. I could be found tutoring.
Thank you. I'm sorry, that's time. Next, we have Gabriella Strunk, followed by Lily Gresham. Gabriella Strunk, followed by Lily Gresham.
Good evening. I'm speaking to you tonight as a concerned teacher. It is no secret that the staffing shortage this year has had a severe impact on our district, but I'm going to share the impact that it has had on the special education students on my campus. As context, we have 6 instructional assistants when we should have 14. 1 teacher and 4 instructional assistants have quit since the beginning of the school year. As special education teachers, it is our responsibility to serve the individual needs of our students. Special education students are an incredibly vulnerable population, and because of that, there is federal legislation that describes how we must serve them to promote equity in education. Right now, we as teachers, instructional assistants, and campus administrators are unable to adhere to these federal regulations due to the lack of district action to support special education staff. It is obviously of critical importance that we pass the audit, but how is that more important than actually ensuring we provide the services written within the IEPs? Is the Department of Education aware that we are not following IEPs with fidelity? Due to the lack of support staff, prepped time, and responsibility of keeping our students safe, I can honestly say that I am unable to collect data, analyze data, and provide the direct service minutes I am required to for each student. This cannot be legal. And as district administrators, there is no way that you are unaware of this. By not taking action, this district is putting special education students at a clear disadvantage in their current education and their futures. Without providing teachers with the resources to enforce the IEPs with fidelity, students will fall further and further behind, preventing them from ever being able to fully participate in their communities. Something must change.
Hi, my name is Lily Gresham. I'd like to first congratulate the board members for winning their positions in the midterms. And I'd also like to say thank you to the district office and especially Dr. Corson for contacting me to follow up and discuss my shock and concern that several previously approved novels, including Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, had recently been censored and removed from the high school English curriculum for being pornographic or having sexually explicit material. The United States depends on its public school system. Our shared society also depends on it. Some county governments' stated purpose of removing pornographic materials from schools and public libraries was actually a campaign of political and religious censorship. The primary function of education is teaching students how to think for themselves. Parents should not be able to tell schools what to teach. We have elected, educated, and experienced school boards for that purpose. Parents are free to express their opinions to the school boards, and if they want, they can sit with their child's teachers and school staff to discuss the curriculum. And they can opt out their child from that class, but must explain why in detail and in writing. They can homeschool their kids if they just want them to learn about only what they want them to know and only what they want them to think. Parents can control what their own kids can learn, but not what everyone else's kids can learn in public schools. Parental censorship in schools is particularly harmful because it prevents students with inquiring minds from exploring the world, seeking truth and reason, stretching their intellectual capacities, and becoming independent critical thinkers. Students must be equipped to think critically, understand facts of the world. Society needs to teach them to learn and develop into independent and critical world-class thinkers. Banning or censoring books is not about protecting children. It's about restricting information simply because someone dislikes the ideas or material. Schools are a community resource, and no individual citizen, parent or otherwise, should assume any right to individually mandate what course that community resource should take. And honestly, many parents have neither the education nor intelligence to make any of those decisions for the rest of us. And the best way to protect our kids is to educate them. Yes.
Next on the agenda is Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Matura, governing board members, cabinet, and guests. Welcome. And I would too like to extend my thanks to the community for your support of the override. It is much appreciated, and to all those that put in individual, small group, or large group efforts. Thank you. Our mission moment tonight in PB Schools, we engage, we inspire, and we nurture students through high-quality instruction, meaningful educational opportunities, and dynamic learning experiences. And one of those experiences took place recently at the Arizona Super Bowl Host Committee Luncheon. Horizon High School's indoor percussion ensemble, HYPE, was invited to help kick off luncheon at the Arizona Biltmore Resort. And the drumline performed for a large audience, including NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, former NFL standout and Arizona Cardinal Larry Fitzgerald, and the Arizona Host Committee. What a fantastic memory for these students to celebrate this occasion. Congratulations. All right, all those you love to exercise, the fun run is back. PB Schools Community 5K Fun Run is back in person this year on Saturday, February 4th, 2023. The event, encouraging active lifestyles among our staff, our families, and our community, once again is a favorite, and we're glad to be able to bring everyone together. Registration began on November 7th, and to sign up for the PB Schools Fun Run, 5K Fun Run or Walk, you may go to www.runsignup.com before Friday, February 3rd. Of course, participants who register by January 6th will receive a beautiful t-shirt, and all participants will register under their choice of team name, either a school or department. So look forward to seeing you out there at Horizon on Saturday, February 4th. My apologies. Finally, PV Pulse, another opportunity to check the PV Pulse is coming up. PV Pulse, formerly known as Bagels with the Board, provides an opportunity for parents, guardians, and community members to meet with me, cabinet members, and governing board members in an informal setting throughout PV Schools District. This reimagined event supporting the PV Schools strategic plan is part of a new strategy that promotes community strength and collaboration within the district. PV Pulse will be held at different locations each quarter to make it as convenient as possible for the community to attend. Our next event will be held at Copper Canyon Elementary on Thursday, November 30th from 10 to 11 a.m. And those are my comments this evening.
Next on the agenda is items for approval. Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Mature, governing board members, cabinet, and guests. Tonight we recommend for approval a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of bonds from the voter-approved initiative of 2019. Ms. Berrigan will present.
Thank you, Dr. Bales, Governing Board, and President Matura. I have a presentation, maybe. That's the one. Okay. Tonight we are selling the remaining portion of the approved 2019 bond package that was passed by our voters. And just to give you an update on that information, that says credit ratings at the top. It's hidden there, but it's currently we still have the same ratings as we did when we sold bonds earlier this year, which is the highest credit rating that is available to school districts. This week, I've had my bond rating calls with Fitch and with Moody's, and we'll see if there's any changes to that, but our fingers are crossed that we'll be able to maintain that rating. The original bond that was approved in 2019 was for $236,140,000. And as mentioned, this is the sale of the remaining $91,035,000 of that. The all-in true interest cost this time around is estimated at about 4.25%. And we will sort of be monitoring the market a little bit more than we typically do since things have been changing and try to ensure a sale on the best day that provides us the lowest all-in true interest cost possible. And it's a little bit early on in the process. Normally, we don't sell bonds until about the January or February timeframe, but we continue to have struggles with our vendors in being able to obtain all of the materials necessary. There's still a material shortage, a supply chain shortage, as well as even sometimes a staffing shortage with our vendors. Selling bonds earlier this year will allow us to get our POs in sooner and allow those vendors to secure the necessary materials and staffing to be able to do these projects. So right now we have more of a general idea of what we expect our projects to be, and this is a list of most of those. Really maintenance and upkeep of our schools at this point in time, painting, HVAC, and things of that nature. And this is Stifel's disclosure as our financial advisor. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time. I think Brian Lundberg from Stifel may be here as well as Jim Giel from Gust if we have any detailed questions. I'm not sure if they've made it in the door. They might be outside.
May I please have a motion to adopt and approve resolution number 530, authorizing the issuance and sale of PVUSD school improvement bonds as presented?
So moved.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? I do just want to make a comment that bonds in place like this allow us to keep our buildings in working order and keep the air conditioning running and keeping our buildings safe for our students and our staff. And we wouldn't be able to have this upkeep of our buildings, which are public. It's public buildings, and it's our responsibility to make sure we are taking care of them. And we do that with the assistance of the people in our community who have supported us in our bonds. So thank you so much.
Yes.
Mrs. Case.
I just want to make a comment because the PV community has been so generous in passing bonds. We are allowed to use our M&O money to pay teachers instead of trying to fix an air conditioner with M&O money. So I just wanted to bring that to your understanding because the generosity of the community has allowed us to have bonds. We use that money to fix those things instead of taking money from M&O. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is gifts and donations. I will have a few to highlight tonight, and we are always appreciative of our very generous community for making donations to our individual schools, to our district, to allow students to have things that they might not otherwise be available to them. Oh, I think I usually. Okay. So this evening I wanted to bring a few to highlight a few. We have a donation from Dorito Partners to Echo Mountain Intermediate School's Caught Being Kind store. And I know those donations go far for those students. We also have a donation from Country Financial Credit Card CC Services Incorporated to Mountain Trail Middle School for their jazz band program, $1,500. The Thunderbirds Foundation made 2 donations recently to girls golf at Paradise Valley High School, $1,000, and $1,000 to girls golf at Shadow Mountain High School. So thank you to everyone who continues to make donations. I just wanted to bring those to your attention. And may I have a motion, please, to approve the gifts and donations as presented?
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is items for discussion. Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Ventura, governing board members, cabinet, and guests. And tonight, Dr. Corson will present for first reading the proposed new courses and revisions for the 23-24 high school course catalog. Dr. Corson.
Thank you. I'll just wait a moment for the presentation. Well, good evening, President Matura, members of the board, Dr. Bales, cabinet, and guests. Tonight is the first reading of the high school course recommendation additions and revisions for the 23-24 school year. Our purpose this evening is to share with the governing board the process and recommendations regarding new and revised high school courses. I'll begin tonight with the process we followed, recommendations for new courses, changes to existing courses, and then end with questions and discussion. I do have our representatives from our career and technical education programs, as well as our district's lead counselor, to also help answer any questions you might have. Early in the school year, high school teams and departments submitted course addition and revision recommendations. Those recommendations were initially reviewed by our lead counselors. These course recommendations were brought to the APC team, a team composed of lead counselors, curriculum assistant principals from our high schools, and other department representatives. At our October meeting, each of these course recommendations and revisions were reviewed and discussed, and the team reached agreement on the following course additions and changes presented to you this evening. Our first series of new courses are part of the Career and Technical Education Program. 4 levels of network security courses will introduce students to elements of computer networking, including information technology essentials, cybersecurity, routing and switching, and cyber defense. These courses offer students opportunities for dual enrollment and certification exams, in addition to preparing students for careers in this growing industry. Our CTE program is also recommending an internship program and computer technologies, elective courses that extend students' preparation for college and career readiness in this field. Other new courses are also being recommended for your consideration. Sports psychology and exercise science are elective courses that we believe will be high-interest courses for those students interested in studying psychology and science concepts through the lens of sports and human performance. Data analytics is also an elective course focusing on statistical thinking. While these courses do not count towards science credits, they do extend students' knowledge and application of science principles, contributing to PV School's Strategic Plans STEAM initiative. College Board has also developed a new advanced placement course beginning next school year called AP Pre-Calculus. This course can serve as an entry point to calculus concepts for those students not quite ready for the advanced calculus courses of Calculus A, B, and BC that we have already adopted. We also want to take this opportunity to recommend to the governing board that we award high school credit for students in our Spanish and Mandarin courses being taught at the middle school. Currently, our immersion programs at the 8th grade level are equivalent to Spanish 3-4 and Mandarin 3-4 taught in high school. Much like we award middle school students high school credit when they take algebra, this opportunity for students to earn high school credit will keep an even playing field with those students who already travel to high schools to take advanced language course and earn credit. If the governing board approves, we'd like to offer that credit to this year's students in the program. Our fine arts program is also recommending 2 new courses, individual instrumental techniques and Winter Guard. Winter Guard would be a spring semester course complementing the Color Guard course offered in the fall. And finally, North Canyon High School is recommending the Emerging Leader, a new JROTC program in conjunction with the Army branch of the Armed Forces. This program will complement the Space Force program already at Shadow Mountain High School. In addition to new courses, our APC team is also recommending changes to several existing courses. Our Honors Interdisciplinary 5-6 program at Shadow Mountain High School is recommended a name change to Honors Digital Academy Advanced Placement Scholars Capstone Project. This name change is more in line with the program description provided. The Honors Innovation in Bioscience and Engineering course is reducing its fee from $40 to $25 to be more in line with other similar courses. These fees pay for such items as computer and network components, tools, connectors, and cables. I mentioned that we are recommending a new spring semester course called Winter Guard. That course will complement the fall version of the course called Color Guard, which is a name change from Band Auxiliary Corps, a name that has been confusing to some over the years. And finally, our language acquisition department is recommending name changes to the EL English language courses in high school to align with the new names that the state is using to describe high school EL programming. This concludes the APC team's recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Mrs. Case?
Thank you. When I read these, I got so excited. Thank you for bringing more technology courses. That's what these kids need. I have family members who have graduated from college or soon to graduate from college in technology, and the sooner we start, the better. I just want us to also do some more coding in elementary school. But all of these courses, I just got so excited. And the idea that students in middle school can get credit, high school credit for their language, yes, thank you. That is wonderful. I appreciate everyone who contributed these ideas that came to your desk that you went through and all the work that went into it. I love the opportunities our students have in this district. It's phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Case.
Mrs. Greenberg?
Yeah, I think as I told Dr. Bales when I saw the cybersecurity in other classes, I was giddy. Just one quick question on the AP pre-calc. So Algebra 3-4 is a prereq for that, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so, and that would normally be, Algebra 3-4 is normally what year?
That's typically a junior level course.
Okay, so we're saying this course would come in if we've got juniors who may just not be interested in or ready for an Calc AB or BC, but this would give them the opportunity to take an AP class that's reaching there.
That is correct, Ms. Greenberg. Students have a couple of different options at their senior level. A couple of options include some dual enrollment courses, as well as now this AP course.
Okay, great, thank you.
I had a couple of comments. I was so really excited to see the addition of the Army ROTC program. Having an additional ROTC program in our district, I think, is really impressive, and having that at North Canyon, I'm excited to see that new program come to life over on that campus. And I was also very excited to see the immersion program, because watching immersion from its beginning in our district, I've been watching immersion and how it's been progressing throughout the years, and seeing now that those students who are in immersion are also now able to be receiving those high school credits, I think is a great boon to our program. And I think could go a long ways to encouraging students to stay with it, because it's getting them those credits faster. And so I'm really excited for the immersion programs in our district, and I was happy to see that. So thank you. Oh, Mrs. Case?
Sorry, I had it in my notes and I didn't look down. Can students get help for the fees if I don't want any student to look at a class and really want to take it, but not to be able to afford that? Is there some ways, and are there counselors letting those students know?
Yeah, in this case, we share the same interest. We don't ever want a fee to be a barrier for students. And so our principals and high school counselors do work with those students to potentially waive fees when appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is presentation of school letter grades. Dr. Bales.
Thank you very much, President Matura, Governing Board members, Cabinet, and guests. Tonight, we present an update on the recently released school letter grades, and I think you'll find this fascinating and interesting and exciting to recognize all the accomplishments across the district. And Dr. Corson and his team with Gene Copen are here to make that presentation.
Good evening, President Matura, Governing Board, Dr. Bales, Cabinet, and guests. Thank you for this opportunity to share information about Paradise Valley's 2022 school letter grades. On October 31st, the Arizona Department of Education released school letter grades that reflected student achievement from the 2021-2022 school year. Tonight, I will first review some brief information about the purpose of school letter grades, explain what each letter grade reflects about a school, and briefly review key data used in the calculations. I will then present our school letter grades, some district comparative data, and share some points of pride. The purpose of the AF accountability system in Arizona has three purposes. First, each school receives a letter grade that reports quantitative data and gives feedback for school improvement. Second, the letter grades are communicated publicly, and this allows families to inform their school choice. And lastly, it holds schools accountable for the most important pieces in school improvement efforts, such as students growing towards proficiency, reducing percentages of students in the lowest achievement rankings, and improving subgroup performance. Each letter grade indicates a level of performance and captures quantitative data about the school as a whole system. The A and B ratings are very similar. Both levels of performance indicate high performance on state assessments, significant student growth, high four-year graduation rates for our high schools, and moving students to proficiency at a higher rate than the state average. The distinguishing point for an A letter grade is that the performance is significantly higher than the state average. A C letter grade indicates that the school is supporting satisfactory student achievement, but improvements on some of the indicators such as growth, proficiency, and grad rates is needed. D and F letter grades would indicate an inadequate performance level and require a great amount of focus on improvement efforts. School letter grade formulas vary depending on the student population schools serve. Our elementary schools and middle schools are measured on the K-8 formula. This formula places great emphasis on students growing to higher levels of achievement on the state assessment, and raising proficiency is also measured. A portion of this formula also measures English language proficiency levels on the Azella assessment for our English learners. Other parts of the formulas monitor minimally proficient levels on third grade reading, minimally proficient levels on eighth grade math, highly proficient levels on eighth grade math, and subgroup improvement. Our traditional high schools have similar components, but also include accountability to graduation rates and improving college and career readiness. And lastly, high schools with alternative status have similar components as our traditional high schools, but also receive credit for helping students stay on track for graduation. The state released a breakdown of letter grades received for all schools in Arizona. The top table displays the number of schools by type in each letter grade. The bottom translates those numbers into percentages that can be compared to PV performance. An impressive statistic to note is that 27% of Arizona K-8 schools earned an A letter grade compared to 55% in PV. I'll pause. That is a great statistic. Additionally, 71% of KA schools in the state achieved an A or B letter grade. PV achieved 79% A and B school letter grades. 68% of 9-12 high schools in Arizona achieved an A or B. PV is at 80% A and B school letter grades for our high schools. Now that we have reviewed the descriptors and formulas for each letter grade, we can now look at how PV schools performed. One celebration for our district, you will notice that this chart only has A, B, and C columns because no schools received D's or F's this year. The light blue column displays schools that received an A letter grade. Light green are schools earning a B letter grade, and light yellow are schools earning C letter grade. The schools written in purple font indicate schools that receive Title I funding. I will be highlighting many points of pride at the end of my presentation, but I would really like to take this moment to congratulate the schools in our district. These letter grades speak highly to the resilience of students and staff through challenging times that the pandemic posed to teaching and learning. This information is the same information, but it's highlighting the changes in letter grades from 19 to 22. Due to the pandemic, the last year schools received a letter grade was 2019. Each school is listed in alphabetical order with the 2019 in the white column and the 2022 score in the light green column. Schools that have a highlighted 2022 letter increased from 2019. All of all of our schools are aiming for A and B letter grades. The bottom table highlights that PV had a 10% increase in the amount of A and B ratings for our elementary schools. Currently, 88% of our K-6 and K-8 schools have achieved A's and B's. This next chart is for our middle schools, and this information is organized in the same fashion. 5 of our 7 middle schools were able to raise their letter grades from 2019 to 2022. Currently, 3 out of 7 of our middle school letter grades are A's and B's, and we also have 1 appeal pending for this group. The last set of tables displays our traditional high schools in the table that is in light blue. 4 out of 5 high schools are A and B rated. We also have 2 appeals in this group that are currently pending. The table at the bottom of the slide that is in light yellow displays Sweetwater, which is measured with the alternative school formula. Sweetwater achieved a C alt letter grade. This is the first year that PV Online has received a school letter grade. They are considered a hybrid school because they serve K-8 and 9-12 students. Both formulas are used to calculate the letter grade and are weighted according to the percentages of students in each group. And this year, PV Online received a B letter grade. We often benchmark ourselves against comparative districts, and this chart displays 4 of our districts that are comparative in demographics and size, and that would be Deer Valley, Dysart, Peoria, and Scottsdale. The chart breaks down by color the number of letter grades received by each district. For the 21-22 school year, our district performed very comparably to these district benchmarks, or these benchmark districts, sorry. Dr. Bales has set the expectation that all of our schools will be A's and B's, and our strategic plan is definitely the roadmap to achieving this expectation. Our work, for example, with our multi-tier system of supports, MTSS, one of our key initiatives is going to be focusing on evidence-based curricular materials, formative and summative standards aligned assessments, and instructions that have high impact results. The answer to better letter grades and keeping our letter grades is a coherent system that aligns curriculum, instruction, and assessment around standards. Our strategic plan initiatives positions our school and district very well to strengthen that alignment among our schools and throughout our grade level bands. To end the presentation tonight, I'd like to present some points of pride that stood out as we were examining school letter grade data to put together this presentation. First, I'd like to celebrate Eagle Ridge, who had a perfect score of 50 points in the area of growth, moving the school from a D to an A. Fireside Elementary scored a perfect score of 30 in proficiency points, earning the school an A letter grade and moving them to the 9th highest scoring K-8 public school in the state. Pinnacle High School scored a perfect score of 20 points in growth, earning the school an A letter grade and moving them to the 18th highest scoring public high school in the state. Boulder Creek Elementary, Fireside Elementary, and Sonoran Sky Elementary were in the top 20 K-8 public schools in the state. And our last points of pride, 17 schools increased their school letter grade from 2019. 20 of our PVUSD schools achieved an A letter grade in 2022. 8 schools, and I have them, they're listed, have maintained an A letter grade for 4 years, 17, 18, 19, and 22. It's amazing. And 3 schools that received Title I funding received an A school letter grade this year, and that would be Desert Cove, Eagle Ridge, and Sunset Canyon. And while there always continues to be opportunities for improvement, we're very proud of the increases that we've seen this year, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. We have comments or questions from the board? Mr. Laney?
I would just like to say again that I am grateful to our teachers and administrators for the hard work that they put in to accomplish these things, and how Eagle Ridge was able to go from a D to an A. It's really impressive and a point of pride. And so I'm grateful to them. So thank you.
Mrs. Greenberg?
I also want to thank the entirety of our staff because it does take a village to get there. I appreciate the fact that the letter grades have evolved over the years and do recognize growth because we see what that really means. And that truly is what assessments are supposed to determine, is a student growing. And so it's truly it's phenomenal to see where our schools are. And I want to thank everybody for that.
Mrs. Case?
Thank you. I first of all want to thank the many teachers in the room and at home who have worked so hard for our students that have made this progress and made all of this possible. I really appreciate the hard work of teachers through difficult times and going through COVID and working so hard to get things moving in the right direction. So thank you very much. I also have a question. How does the appeal work? What's the process? How long does it take?
Yes, Mrs. Case. So an appeal is allowable. We had to have those in by November 15th, and the state has about 2 weeks to act upon them. There's different criteria that you have to appeal. We are appealing on what they call it's like an event that interrupted testing and we believe caused possible errors in the data. And then 2 of our schools just have errors in the formula that we have found. And so basically you submit a narrative and supporting documentation, and then the state reviews that and makes a decision.
So would know within 2 weeks?
We're anticipating within like the second week of December.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Bacon?
I mean, I'm almost speechless, which never happens. Almost. But I'll come up with some words. The amount of pride and gratitude that I have around these scores and how hard our employees have worked to make this happen, I just can't even state it. I have friends who are teachers, I have family who are teachers, and I know how hard they work. And I just appreciate you. I also appreciate students who are willing to do the work too, because they had a little bit to do with this. And parents who are at home reinforcing everything that we ask them to reinforce. So every employee in the district, every parent, every student, thank you so much for all the tremendous work that you have put into this.
Thank you. To reiterate what Mrs. Greenberg was saying, seeing how these grade levels have evolved to bring in the growth and the proficiency and not just looking at just the grade of the test on the one day is really nice to see how that is that strategy is working, and to see our our schools to be able to excel in different areas is really exciting. And the points of pride were every single one of those was really a reason for celebration and was great to have that highlighted for us tonight. And again, thank you to everyone who plays a part in educating this community. It's a great testament to hard work from everyone. So thank you. Next on the agenda is Budget Task Force update. Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Ventura, governing board members, cabinet, and guests. Tonight, we present an update on the work of the Budget Task Force. And I'd like to begin with my thanks to the employees who participated in these difficult conversations and recommendations. Having participated in discussing budget reductions and budget increases in more than one district, I can tell you that it is never easy either way. To begin our presentation, Ms. Berrigan and Dr. Holmes will start.
Thank you, Dr. Bales, President Matura, and governing board members. Tonight, I want to begin with the budget task force update, as well as we'll get to the cabinet recommendation. But just want to start again with the background and history. I know that I've shared how this occurred and what brought us to this point, but just want to reiterate that for everyone's memory and for maybe any who haven't heard that yet. So in school year 2021, with the pandemic, the district, like all districts in the state of Arizona, received the ESG, or Enrollment Stabilization Grant, from the governor's office. That was essentially his version of ESSER funding. And he provided that to districts and charters so that they could stabilize their budget for the purposes of that loss in enrollment that all of us experienced during that COVID time period. And so that really took on what were some of our M&O expenditures in that 2021 school year so that we could maintain our annual contracts that we provide to our staff. And that was important to us. And so that's what our district and many districts use those ESG funds for. When planning for the 21-22 school year, the transferring of those ESG covered costs that had previously been in M&O were not included in the M&O budgeting process. And in addition, and sort of a compounding factor to that, is that the district's yet to regain that enrollment that we had lost since 2021. In a typical year, we would have addressed that decline in enrollment leading to the loss of state funding by reducing ongoing expenditures. But this didn't occur until a little bit later on in the budget planning process, which has left that deficit to be addressed. But as a result of the district's excellent fiscal management, the budget balance carry forwards that the district has were able to be used to address the deficit for fiscal year 21-22. Because the district discovered the issue after planning for 22-23 budget, the districts developed the budget task force, which was made up of representatives from the various stakeholder groups throughout the district. The goal was to make adjustments in a way that was least disruptive to the high quality education that our staff provide to PV schools. So with the support of that ESSER fund, which was through the American Rescue Plan ending, and that significant decline in enrollment that we're seeing, the district needed to make adjustments so that we didn't have to continue with the shortfall moving forward into future budget planning. So it's a challenge, certainly, but it's one that PV schools can absolutely get through. And just want to provide a reminder that the district's M&O budget, 85 to 87%, varies from year to year, but that range is what is spent on staff salaries and benefits. So that was the background. The budget task force makeup, these are the members from PVEA, PVSEA. We had 4 representatives each, and then COA and PVP, had 3 representatives, as well as Dr. Holmes and myself. And the purpose was to develop a recommendation to cabinet to resolve the ongoing budget shortfall and provide employees with additional compensation at the same time. So this takes us through the summary of the budget task force and the resolution for this current fiscal year. So we start with this current fiscal year, and then we'll move into the 23-24, which resolves things moving forward. The ongoing deficit was a little bit under $14 million at about $13,675,000. We used some one-time revenue increases, which is a repurposing of ESSER funds, just under $4 million to help resolve one time for this year, 22-23. And when you see one time on here, that means that resolves that for 22-23, but we need ongoing solutions moving forward. So there's an ongoing revenue increase from the state, which was great news that we finally had confirmed on June 30th of this year. And that added to our state equalization just under $15 million, about $14.8 million. So that helps with the current issue as well. We did some one-time reductions, and that included $900,000 out of one of the ESSER grants for what had been slotted for marketing, as well as did a 22-23 hiring freeze, which has amounted to about $300,000 for a total of $1.2 million in one-time reductions. For ongoing reductions, we collapsed 12.5 classrooms at the beginning of this year once we saw that we were down about 800 students, and that amounts to about $850,000. Then for an ongoing expense increase, you remember the other part of the purpose of the budget task force was to provide some pay increase to staff, which will cost about $7 million. That leaves the budget balance for 22-23, this current fiscal year, in a positive $205,000. But because some of the solutions that you see are one-time, that one-time revenue and that one-time reduction, those need to be addressed still moving forward. Those are just one-time monies for this year. So that balance after ongoing solutions is just under $5 million. And essentially what the budget task force started the 23-24 budget year with that deficit and needed to do something to resolve that. So what was determined were ongoing reductions to help resolve that, and they amounted to a little over $4 million. I'll show on next slide what those details are. That would leave the balance moving into bargaining, which begins in the late winter timeframe, at a negative $950,000. So that's just this part of the budget process. That does not include any further reductions in student enrollment projected for next year or any cost increases. That's just from starting this process. So the budget reductions from the budget task force include these 7 items, which is a reduction of all employees' work schedule by 1 day, which is often referred to as a furlough. That saves the district about $870,000. The reduction to ABM, which is our custodial company, for their hours by 2 per day, which would result in a savings of $504,000. And then M&O department and school budget non-personnel cuts. This is effectively their supply budgets for both departments and schools of 5%, is a savings of $97,000 approximately. Then increasing average gen ed class size by 1, which would result in 29 FTEs. And as a reminder, that's a full-time equivalent or 1 teacher. That was a savings of $1,972,000. The removal of elementary accounting clerk positions. There are 14 equivalents in there for $512,000. And then the reduction to college and career specialists to make their contract the same amount of days as a teacher contract, which is a savings of $23,000. And then finally, the elimination of Hanover, which supported some of our surveying that we do, of $50,000. That totaled that $4,028,000 from the previous slide. And just, I have the note as a reminder again at the bottom that begins the 23-24 bargaining season with the $950,000 deficit among other revenue and expenditure changes. And Dr. Bales? Oh, no, sorry, Dr. Holmes.
Thank you. So the reductions as presented do provide capacity to provide additional compensation for our employees, and this is a summary of what those compensation increases would be. For PVSEA, our ESP employees, they would receive an average of 6% with a minimum of 3% increase to pay. And that is going to be highly individualized based on each individual as it's due to a restructure of the salary schedule. It does include a one-step movement for all employees. It includes an additional $250 per band for longevity. It also includes a new band of longevity in the 4 to 6 year range at $250. And again, additional pay to base depending on where employees are in the salary schedule. Next, please. For PVEA, our certified employees, would be a 2% increase to base salary, an $835 increase to each level of priority service credit, which represents an average increase of 3% with a minimum increase of 2%. I do want to pause and note here that we did communicate this to employees yesterday, and there was a typo. And that there was in the communication, it indicated it was an $825 increase to priority service credit. So that was incorrect by $10. The actual amount is $835. For executive support staff, they will receive a 6% increase to base salary, and for our 3 administrative groups, a 2% increase to base salary. Next. I want to make sure and clarify that this is these compensation increases would be in addition to what the board had approved last April. Last April, the board had approved a 1% increase to base pay, $1,000 one-time retention incentive, and a 3.34% one-time retention incentive. And so these recommendations would be in addition to that. For the timeline, the recommendation for pay increases contemplated are to be for this year and ongoing, which creates a little bit of a challenge as we are almost halfway through the current year. So to do that, the proposal would be to provide our people with a one-time retention incentive to be provided in December, which would amount to be approximately half of what their increase would be for the year. That would come in December. Beginning in January, we would adjust everybody's pay, so the pay increases would be in each and every one of their paychecks going forward. And then beginning in 2023-24 school year, we would have to make an adjustment of 1 day to everybody's salaries because as you had seen in the budget reductions, there was a 1-day furlough. So so that would be backed out of people's pay. It would be the equivalent of 1 day of pay, and we will be reducing the calendar work days by 1 day correspondingly. And next. Yes.
Okay, Dr. Bales.
And as you can see, the work of the Budget Task Force was very comprehensive, and their recommendations tackled the 2 goals of addressing the budget shortfall and providing additional compensation to our employees. Clearly, the employee groups worked together and prioritized the largest increases to our support employees. Yet the work of the Budget Task Force is just the beginning to address our expenditures in a declining enrollment district. And as you noticed, their work ended with a $950,000 short of goal. As I said, this work is not easy, and we want to honor the work of the Budget Task Force. However, we also want to offer some changes. It's important to remember that we honored staffing allocation and raises last year and this year, and they may not have been provided if we had planned for the ESG in our M&O budget for the 21-22 school year. The compensation recommendations tonight are in addition, as Dr. Holmes mentioned, to the 1% on the base, the $1,000 return to work stipend, and the 3.34% retention stipend we paid out last week. Based on board direction, the cabinet provides 1 revision and 2 additional recommendations for the board to discuss and consider publicly. The board's questions, comments, and feedback will guide our final recommendations tentatively planned for board approval on December 1st. Our suggested revision is to eliminate the increased class size staffing ratio by 1. We have worked so hard to lower class size ratios over the last several years, and we are committed to making cuts as far away from the classroom as possible. Next, we would recommend we eliminate the M&O results-based funded instructional coaches and M&O funded social emotional learning and behavior specialists. These last 2 recommendations are extremely difficult to make. Both positions align well with our strategic plan. However, we have district-wide initiatives in MTSS and PBIS that provide the frameworks and structures and support in these areas. We know we need to support our teachers and our schools and our implementation teams for these initiatives. We'll have to consider these factors when finalizing implementation rubrics. Additionally, there would remain 13.5 FTE in these specialists funded from ESSER and/or title dollars for the 23-24 school year. Additionally, we will continue to have M&O and special education funded social workers and counselors across the district. Nearly 70 unique ideas were initially identified, including these 2 recommendations. With this 1 revision and 2 additions, we are financially in a better position moving forward with no budget shortfall as we move into the spring bargaining sessions. With that in mind, we will still have tough decisions to make as the budgeting process will need to consider several factors for the fiscal 24 budget, like increased costs for goods and services due to record high inflation, increased utility costs, and state mandated increases to minimum wage and retirement contributions. These increases are compounded with an anticipated decline of student enrollment due to falling birth rates, affordable housing, and choices for educational service providers. The sky is not falling, but it is cloudy and still very unpredictable. Ms. Berrigan, would you please continue and restate the revisions and additional recommendations?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Bales. This slide reflects the summary of those changes. You will see the elimination of line 4, the increase in average gen ed class size by 1 as the recommendation from Cabinet, and the addition of lines 8 and 9, which are highlighted in green, the reduction of the social emotional learning specialist position, and the reduction of the instructional coach positions. That brings the total for the budget reductions to help resolve the issue to $5,100,000 and would leave us beginning the 23-24 bargaining year with a positive balance of $122,000.
So for next steps, tentatively, we would plan to bring a recommendation for your approval on December 1st. That would be your next regularly scheduled board meeting. There's some technical work to do that HR, payroll, and finance will engage in to make the pay increases happen in particular. In January, for our ESP employees specifically, because they just can't really determine by what I described what their increase would be, we would look at communicating to them their new grade steps, longevity and hourly rates, so that they understood what that would be for them. That'll come in January. And then we will make plans to meet with employees that are impacted by these recommendations to help them understand the transfer process and to answer their specific questions.
And with that, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
We do have comment cards that we'll go through first. A reminder to, I will call 3 names so we know the order. Please state your first and last name when you come to the podium, and you will have 2 minutes. First, we have Sarah Ciccarello, followed by Courtney Somar and Trevor Nelson.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sarah Ciccarello, and I'm a teacher at Snorenskye Elementary. I've been a teacher with the district for 15 years. I grew up going to PV schools, and I've also sent my children to them. I love my students, and I've always been devoted to myself to the district. I'm speaking to you today for 2 very important reasons. Last year, I was diagnosed with cancer, mid-school year. It was a very difficult time for me, and it was hard to step away from my classroom and take care of myself. I didn't know how to talk to my class about my condition or my upcoming leave. My school's SEL teacher, Samantha Borelli, came into my class and talked to them and helped them with the transition. She also checked in on me and my class while I was gone. She not only helped with, I'm sorry, I lost my spot, I'm sorry. She not only helped the children get through this difficult time, but also myself. I've seen firsthand the impact that having the SEL support has had on my school community. We need these teachers in our campuses. It is what's best for students. With her support, I came back early and finished the last 4 weeks of school while undergoing chemotherapy. I also returned this year while having daily radiation treatments for the first 4 weeks of school. I did this because even though it was extremely difficult, I do what's best for my students, and I ask that you do what's best for our students. The second reason I'm speaking to you today is because of the process by which these budget decisions were decided. I believe that the district has always understood that the bargaining agreement is the teacher's voice. I have always felt that there was a mutual respect between the cabinet and our teachers. If we don't continue to follow the bargaining language, teachers will lose their voices. You must consider the commitment that you have to us teachers, as we have been so committed to our classrooms. Do not take away my voice. Thank you.
Good evening, Governing Board and Cabinet. My name is Courtney Somar. I'm currently my 23rd year here in the district. I've taught at Arrowhead, Sonoran Sky, Desert Shadows Middle School, and I've been an instructional coach since the position was established in PVUSD 3 years ago. I love being a coach. First of all, I'd like to address the budget miscalculation. I'm pretty sure none of your teachers back here still understand how that happened. As a math teacher, I always teach my students to check and double check their work. How does this not carry over into running a school district? Where's your systems of checks and balances? How does this possibly happen? This was no small mistake. This was in the ballpark of $14 million. If our students check their work as well as you do, we would not have a top-rated district with 20 A-rated schools. Because of this miscalculation, my position as an instructional coach is now on the chopping block. I'm also a realist. I understand now there have to be cuts made. The second thing I want to discuss is the budget task force. This was supposed to be in a collaborative manner. The task force came up, from what I understand, with recommendations for the cabinet. The cabinet decided with no further consultation of the task force to change these recommendations. This is not how our district operates, or it has not been in the past. Is this where we are headed as a district? That we have a committee recommendations and those recommendations are ignored and there's no further conversation? This is a sad state for our district. Instructional coaches and SELs are the ones paying for your mistake and your unwillingness to follow the process that we have set up in the district. I also want you to understand that your opinion of instructional coaches and SELs is being heard loud and clear. The message I'm hearing is that we are disposable, we are not valued, and we're not worth fighting for. I wish you would understand that you need coaches, teachers need coaches, and students need coaches. If you do not feel this way, then you are unclear of the job that we do. We are student-centered coaches. We put the needs of students front and center. We concentrate on student learning rather than fixing teachers. This way we can impact instruction and student achievement.
After Trevor Nelson is going to be Justin Price, Cindy LeBlanc, and Talisa Gallego.
Good evening, Governing Board. I'm saddened to learn that the Executive Committee altered the Budget Task Force recommendations without consultation of stakeholders, teachers, staff, task force, parents, community members, and then attempted to play it off tonight as their decision. That kind of backroom dealing is like using apps like Signal and Telegraph to communicate with community members to avoid Freedom of Information Act requests and avoid open meeting laws, and should not be tolerated in functioning organizations. That 12.5 FTE cut that happened 4 weeks into the school year affected my child directly, and he's still recovering from that interruption of his learning, but he's lucky to have great teachers and a great SPED team to support his IEP. I see in the plan there's no cuts to district personnel, and that must be nice. But the elimination of the elementary accounting clerks makes no sense, because in a financial crisis, we're going to cut the people who track the finances. How's that going to happen? The instructional coaches have been helping teachers and staff. They administer assessments, they help coach them and help them learn and become better teachers. And it allows the teachers to focus more on the learners and make every minute count. Now, I'm sure some community members are thrilled to see SEL positions being closed, which is a terrible thing to cheer for. Students who missed out on in-person learning for almost 2 years or started school not in person also missed out on the social emotional skills learned by being around other people and teachers and students. For the record, SEL is not CRT, so don't start with that. Social emotional learning involves gaining critical interpersonal skills needed to function as a human in the community, like self-regulation, emotional resilience, and recovering from disappointment, which are skills the community members of PV have been employing consistently this school year as we watch Paradise in disarray. Has the governing board truly considered every place that can be cut when they're tightening the belts, like cell phone perks and car allowances and performance bonuses that obviously haven't been earned? I hope the governing board will not make a decision tonight on the budget, but instead actually make data-informed decisions based on each site and the students' needs. There should not be a one-size-fits-all solution.
Good evening. My name is Justin Price. Given that the budget recommendations from Cabinet did not have the benefit of hearing from all of the stakeholders involved in the budget task force, I'd like to offer some coaching questions for you to consider. First, considering the difficulty in hiring, how many employees whose positions are cut do you expect might continue to work in Paradise Valley next year? How will you mitigate the effects of losing instructional coaches on new and interim teachers that may not have completed teacher preparation programs? What are some potential impacts on the STEAM initiative without instructional coaches? How do you reconcile naming MTSS a district-wide initiative while cutting SEL specialists responsible for Tier 1 instruction? And finally, why would any PV stakeholder believe that any future initiatives will be given time to be fully implemented rather than tossed aside for a quick fix?
My name is Cindy LeBlanc. I am the Social Emotional Learning Specialist at Echo Mountain Primary and Intermediate. This is my 23rd year working for the district, both as a classroom teacher and a specialist. During this time, I have seen the needs of our students and staff change dramatically, especially in the last few years. Our district created the positions of SEL specialists and instructional coaches out of an abundance of need. The need for these roles is greater than ever, and it is now being proposed to cut these positions. This would be detrimental to those we serve. From bell to bell, I have students who need me, teachers who need me. This is the busiest I have ever been in education. Without SEL specialists, you are asking classroom teachers to absorb an overwhelming task, many of whom do not have the training to do so. Kids are struggling, teachers are struggling, and we are there working to bridge that gap. Without these positions, we will fail our kids. After the recent loss of our student, Cassidy Moreno, the district's care and concern team commented multiple times on the amazing support team we had in place at Echo. At an unpredictable, tragic time, our SEL team is able to provide the ongoing support that is needed. The job we do is so important that our district paid for SEL specialists to attend the Betsy conference today, which addressed PBIS and MTSS, both long-term goals for our district. SEL specialists and instructional coaches are pivotal in supporting this plan. I would like to leave you with words from our keynote speaker at today's conference. Academic success doesn't happen without health. Districts who understand this will reflect it in their budget. Please do what's best for our kids. Thank you.
Just a moment. After Talisa Gallego, we'll have Julie Garcia, Mariah Reed Brown, and then Denise Kopernak.
My name is Talisa Gallegos, and I'm the school social worker at the Echo Mountain Primary School. On October 27th, 2022, our SEL and myself noticed helicopters hovering above the area, unsure of what was going on. Monday, we received that answer. A man and woman came in and asked to speak with me. They were the aunt and uncle of Cassidy Moreno, a third-grade student at Echo Mountain Primary who died 7 minutes from this office due to a road rage incident after leaving our school 19 minutes prior. I went into preparation mode. This was not a task that I could tackle alone, given we serviced 529 students on the primary side.
No years of college, master's degree, or years of experience can prepare you for these tragic situations. And there was no way I could support our school without the help of our SEL team. The PVUSD mission statement is to engage, inspire, nurture our students through high-quality instruction, meaningful education opportunities, and dynamic learning experiences. This cannot be done without the SEL support provided to students in collaboration with their school social worker. Our goal is to teach the students of our future so we can prevent these types of tragedies by teaching proper skills such as conflict resolution in schools before we lose more and more members of our community. So I ask the board to review this decision, think of our students, and understand how detrimental it would be if we were to lose our SEL specialists.
Good evening. My name is Julie Garcia. I am a parent of a son right now at Sandpiper, an incoming kinder, part of the PTO at Sandpiper, and also a UPC volunteer. Thank you to everyone that's in this room that supports our kids, the teachers, the families. I learned about those last two recommendations on Tuesday, like many, I think, in this room, and I am speechless. I'm upset that you didn't follow process to include the teachers in these decisions. I'm upset in how those two changes will impact my son and my son that's coming into Sandpiper, and it will change the entire environment of our kids. Miss Denise is our social worker. She knows in the first 30 days of school, she knows every student's name. They know her, they love her. The work that she does is not the work that everyone sees. It's supporting the families and the children that need her. Taking that away is going to change the learning environment and long-term for our children. We are going to lose families from this district if you continue to make these significant cuts. So I'm asking the board, please own the mistake and agree to revisit these recommendations with the proper people in the room. And I would like you to include a parent from the UPC.
Good evening, Governing Board, Cabinet, and Superintendent Dr. Bells. Thank you for your time and consideration. My name is Mariah Reed Brown, and I am a school counselor at PV High School. I am here as an advocate for the profession of social emotional learning specialists and for our students. I understand that the Budget Task Force Committee was charged with an impossible task that has unfortunately resulted in both MO-funded SEL and instructional coaches not returning in the 23-24 school year. At the same time, I think it is important to share data and factual information for the board and cabinet to consider at the upcoming bargaining year, as the upcoming bargaining year is ahead. ASCA is the American School Counselor Association and has provided data from the previous school year. 1 in 6 children and teens ages 6 to 17 have a treatable mental health disorder. 40% felt sadness and hopelessness. 20% seriously considered attempting suicide, and 9% have actually attempted suicide 1 or more times. This data supports the high need for having SELs on our campuses. The following is data from our campus that we have collected this school year alone. To date, we have logged 657 visits with students in need of social emotional support. That's roughly 10 social emotional crises per day. We have also completed 13 suicide risk assessments in the first 15 weeks of school. That's roughly 1 suicide risk assessment per week, resulting in needing further evaluation by a mental health professional before returning to our schools. This year alone, our SEL has completed 100 classroom visits. That's an average of 3 to 4 per day. Weekly 45-minute support groups to address impulse regulation and classroom management behavior, as well as weekly 30-minute restorative circles to help reduce behavioral issues. Our district mission states that every learner is empowered for a lifetime of success. In order for us to meet this, we need to take into account the mental health crisis that our nation is arising. If we decrease the supports.
Excuse me, that's time. Thank you. After Denise Kopernick will be Suzanne Odea and Michelle Courtwright and Melissa Schwartz.
Hello, everyone. My name is Denise Kirprick, and I'm the school social worker at Sandpiper Elementary. I'm also a Sandpiper mom with 3 students. I came to this district from a neighboring school district that really relies on their social workers. I came to this district because you sold the idea that social emotional learning was important for our students. I also came to be closer to my own children. I was hired under a grant, and now I'm under the ESSER grant where I have this last year. We're seeing a dramatic increase in behavioral health needs for our students. Between my SEL and myself, we worked with over 125 students last school year. We have a population of 440 students. You do the math. We're seeing over 25% of our population because of behavioral needs or mental health needs. We see those students in lunch bunches, social skills groups, crisis intervention, individual sessions, or classroom SEL lessons. We are constantly called on crisis due to heightened behavioral needs. Those crises look like suicide assessments, self-injurious assessments, panic attacks where I'm helping children breathe on the floor, running around classrooms, explosive behaviors, elopement, and others. We are there to support our teachers, our administration, and our parents. The proposed budget cuts to cut SEL and instructional coaches is a direct blow to the needs of our students and our teachers. PVUSD just celebrated raising letter grades throughout the district, yet you are proposing to cut the supports that help to increase those letter grades. I urge you to think of the mental health needs of our students and teachers. Staff are overwhelmed. We need support. You get to choose whether it's welcome to paradise or welcome to disarray.
Hello, Governing Board. I'm Suzanne O'Day, lead school psychologist for PV. Over the past few years, several of our schools really have made great gains in analyzing data and implementing targeted interventions for students in need. That is MTSS, and we cannot do MTSS without our SEL specialists. As a school psychologist, I am very concerned about the elimination of these staff members. In addition to academics, workplace competencies are critical to positive post-school outcomes. As you know, employees are looking for those with soft skills, SEL skills, as a priority for readiness in the workplace. These are things like work ethic, communication, teamwork, collaboration, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills. Nationally, 1 in 6 children aged 2 through 8 have a diagnosed mental, behavioral, or developmental disorder. 1 of 10 experience multiple types of violence. 7 of the 10 leading causes of death are connected to adverse childhood experiences. In Arizona, 61% of adults experience mental illness without treatment. Therefore, early childhood intervention is critical. On average, 41% of Arizona high school students feel sad or hopeless. 23% of high school students in Arizona seriously considered attempting suicide. 10% of high school students attempted suicide. In 2021, AZ Teen Lifeline answered 42,000 calls and texts. Dr. Bales. The recommended ratios for school psychologists is 1 to 500 and 1 to 250 for both school counselors and school social workers. And we are not currently near these ratios and are already below several of our comparable neighboring districts that Ms. Jean spoke about. The elimination of SEL specialists in PVUSD will have a significant impact on our teachers and other student support specialists. Most importantly, the loss of these positions will negatively impact the health and well-being and academic achievement and post-school outcomes for our students. The national, well, you know my point. Thank you.
President Maturo, Governing Board, Dr. Bales, and Cabinet. My name is Michelle Courtwright, and along with being an employee in this district, I live in this district, my children graduated in this district, and my grandchildren are currently enrolled. So it's personal to me for this district to succeed. As a person that was on the budget task force, I can tell you it was not an easy thing. And there were many times that I came to at least one of you and I said, this is not working. And I was told to trust the process. And that's what we did. We put things on the table, we took things off, and in the end, every one of us had a responsibility and the ability to say, I can't live with this. And no one did. We thumbed this with the stipulation that when we do that, we walk out of this room and we defend it with everything we have. And that didn't happen. Somehow there was pushback. And instead of coming back to us like you always have and asking us to fix it, the board doesn't like this, we need to start again. Nobody did that. They changed a recommendation that somebody said we wanted to stay away from the classroom. This is as close to the classroom as you can get without cutting a teacher. These are the people that are allowing us right now to teach. They're keeping my people from having to stand in the hallway with a student. They are allowing our students to get back to a normal life in education. You cannot do this. I know that cabinet can't do this, but you have the ability to do one of two things: impose this on us, or tell them to go back to the table and figure out something that is in the best interest of students, staff, and this district, because this recommendation from cabinet is not. And it will be devastating to education in this district. Thank you.
After Melissa Schwartz will be Athena Westcott, Carrie Thornton, and Kylie Eldridge.
Good evening, President Matura, Governing Board, Dr. Bales, and Cabinet. I'm Melissa Schwartz, a parent of both a recent PVHS CREST graduate and current student. I'm also the president of the CREST Parent Group, past president of the United Parent Council, among many other volunteer roles I currently serve or have served over the past many years. I have served on many district committees and still never quite understand how the district works out their personnel budget line items. However, I do know how to read budget numbers. It appears we need to reduce by almost $3 million. It is never easy to reduce budgets, especially when including reducing jobs. If staffing needs to be reduced, why is it not possible to work with the principals to adjust staffing at their schools to determine what would be in the best interests at those sites? I understand the desire not to add students to our classrooms and encourage a revised look at solutions without gutting the social and emotional learning specialists. I have seen the success over the past 2 years and heard from parents about SEL successes. If you do not think these new letter grades, all A through C, was a result of having the SEL coaches and instructional coaches, you are mistaken. Last, when committees spend months together to come up with ideas that are then modified, even with good intentions, it undermines the work of all of those involved. I encourage the governing board to reject this recommendation and go back to this committee for other suggestions that will benefit our students and our staff. Thank you.
Athena Westcott, then Carrie Thornton, then Kylie Eldridge.
Good evening, board members, President Matura, Dr. Bales, and Cabinet. Thank you for your time and allowing us to comment tonight. My name is Athena Westcott, and I am a 7th grade ELA teacher at Greenway Middle School. 2 years ago, I stood at a podium just like this in front of a governing school board, speaking about how important teachers were needed in our classrooms. It was one of the most nerve-wracking moments in my life. I swore I'd never do it again. Never say never. Fast forward, here I am 2 years later, standing at this podium in front of a governing school board, terrified to speak. However, this time, the love for my Greenway family overpowers the scariness. This time, I will speak about how important all staff members are needed in our classroom. At 44 years old, I am a first-year school teacher. A little over a year and a half ago, I began my path at Greenway Middle School. From day one, I knew I was at home. I was immediately welcomed with open arms. These past 18 months have been a dream come true. I would not be where I am without the help and love from not just the teachers, but from our important members such as our SEL specialist, instructional coach, and our instructional coaches. Most importantly, our students wouldn't be where they need to be without these awesome members. It takes special people to work at Greenway, and we have that. Our administration, teachers, SEL specialist, instructional coach, and more are the perfect team. We are a whole heart. To take away any piece of that would be crushing. I'm asking you all tonight to not tear apart our happy home and to please not break our heart. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Carrie Thornton, and I have worked in the PV School District for 24 years. My last 3 years have been working as an SEL specialist. When I heard Tuesday that SEL and instructional coach positions were going to be cut, my heart sank. My first thought was, what's going to happen to all the students that we work with every day? What are they going to do when they can't regulate themselves? What are the students that are going through crisis going to do? Who's going to have the time to support them? Then my thought came to, what are the classroom teachers going to do? Because now they're going to have to take on all of this. They're already under so much pressure to make sure standards are mastered. Instructional coaches make sure these teachers have the access to curriculum that they need. They help newer teachers and veterans alike to make sure they have what they need to be effective teachers. Coaches also help teachers with classroom management. And if coaches aren't there, where are these teachers going to go for this support? What are they going to do when they have a student break down in the middle of their class where they're trying to teach their lessons? Teachers instinctively will want to help that student, but where? Teachers can't leave 30 other students in their classroom alone. How are they going to find time to teach the skills to help them manage these emotions if this student never starts to feel that way again? This is too much to ask of any one group of people. There are many other groups I could speak of if I had the time. I know next year I'll have a job somewhere, but again, what are the students going to do next year? We need to support our students and staff so that we can continue to make growth that we are in the process of making, as you saw from the earlier presentation. I want to work with my students, teachers, staff, and families to continue to make the difference in their lives just as much as they have made a difference in mine. I'm a firm believer that I need to practice what I preach, and working as an SEL has made me a better friend, wife, mother, and teacher. I take to heart the skills that I'm trying to instill in my students and practice them in my daily life for the betterment of all who are around me. For the sake of the kids and staff and families, I ask you to reconsider, and just remember, you have to Maslow before you can bloom.
After Kylie Eldridge will be Callie Westman, Katie Jenkins, and Sam Barale.
Good evening, governing board members. Thank you for this opportunity to come and support my SEL and instructional coaching team. My name is Kylie Eldridge, and I teach 7th and 8th grade math at Greenway Middle School. I am originally from Indiana, and my journey as an educator in Paradise started last January when I was hired on as a student teacher in the final semester of my teacher prep program. Looking back in light of the post-pandemic climate and about 1,500 miles between me and my family and everything that I've loved, I remember how lost I was emotionally and professionally. More profoundly, I remember my SEL and instructional coaching team who took me under their wing and ensured that I would be supported. I could not have imagined the impressively wide repertoire of the instructional and interpersonal skills that would help me ensure that my students would receive the learning experience that they are entitled to. After a year in Paradise, they continue to be an absolutely essential lifeline, not only for me, but for other students on campus. My team taught me how to work with fidelity for my administration, the dedication for my community, and with an undying passion for my amazing students. I could never be the role model that I strive to be for my students if I did not have my instructional coaches and my SEL team to be the role models that I so desperately needed and will continue to need in the future. Thank you, Corey, Jen, and Carrie for being role models to me, and thank you, SEL and all instructional coaches in the district. Greenway family supports you. Our students need you. We need you. And this needs to be addressed.
Good evening, board members. My name is Callie Wiesman, and I am a first-year teacher at Greenway Middle School. And I can honestly say the hard decision of leaving my home state and driving 27.5 hours was well worth it. About a month ago, I sat in this exact room where my colleagues talked about all the positives and successes happening at Greenway, and I am standing here today talking about how they are possible. I have always wanted to teach, but I didn't realize how many questions I would need answered and how much support was needed to provide the best version of myself for my students. I have been able to provide this version that I am proud to be through the support of my instructional coaches and SEL specialists on my campus. Every question, concern, and hard day is answered and comforted by the people who fill these positions. Behind every great teacher, there is someone who continues to give them confidence, motivation, and support, and the same goes for the students. Both of these positions play a huge role on how I've been able to have such a successful first half of the year. Both of these positions have impacted my teaching skills in such positive ways. Both of these positions provide feedback that lead me to accomplish greatness in my classroom and guide and support students in ways that they need. Both of these positions take on different duties, but benefit our students and staff in ways that truly make a difference. The support that I have at this school is the reason it was so easy for me to decide that I am here to stay. Please don't remove the support system that I have behind me, because that is the reason I wake up every morning knowing I am going to have yet again another successful day at GMS. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, governing board members. Thank you for allowing me the chance to speak tonight. My name is Katie Jenkins. In 2020, I quit my 17-year career as a restaurant manager and moved my family from Indiana to Phoenix, Arizona. In the midst of a worldwide shutdown and hiring freezes, I had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't earn my bachelor's and master's degrees in teaching, but there was always a desire to share knowledge, and through Arizona's alternative certification path, teaching became my calling. I started teaching science at Greenway Middle School in October of 2020. It is because of our instructional coaches that I am successful. I had help in understanding the Arizona standards, the adopted curriculum, and lesson planning. They taught me how to engage my students in class and the value in differentiating instruction for our unique population through authenticity and relevance. They are my sounding board in a world with a lot of noise. I am currently in my 3rd year of teaching, and I am the new science IDL. I still reach out to them for support. Not only do they guide me through the PLC process, they attend the science PLCs and help me direct my team with data-driven evidence. They are essential. Our SEL specialist makes kids feel safe and loved. Our kids trust her and seek her out as a role model. Our kids have burdens outside of school that they find our SEL specialist as their safe space. As teachers, we also seek her out as a support when we are struggling. She is essential. When I first started working for Paradise Valley, I was told, "Welcome to paradise. Do not let us lose this piece of paradise. Greenway will not be the same if we lose our instructional coaches and our SEL specialists." As a parent of a child in the district and an employee, it is an imperative that these positions remain in all our schools. We need them like the desert so desperately needs the rain. Thank you for your time.
After the speaker will be Jennifer Olson, Loretta Sotelo, and Tammy Newell.
My name is Samantha Borelli, and I am the Social Emotional Learning Specialist at Sonoran Sky and Desert Shadows Elementary Schools. I moved all the way from Colorado to take this job opportunity, knowing that PVUSD has an exceptional reputation. After I eagerly transitioned my entire life to the state of Arizona, I became one of the first cells to work in the school district. When I was in elementary school, I had several traumatic childhood experiences that caused a lot of grief and loss and future diagnoses of anxiety, depression, and complex PTSD. The reason why I'm being vulnerable and sharing this information to the public is because I often think about my elementary school days and wish that I had somebody to talk to who listened, cared, and taught me healthy, safe, and appropriate ways to self-regulate and cope with my strong emotions. You are proposing eliminating a position that other districts in the country are dying to have because students are literally dying by suicide every single day. Suicide rates among children and teens are at the highest in history. By the time I finish reading my speech, someone will have died by suicide. The need for social and emotional support is critical and crucial for a child's academic and overall future success. We need to prioritize cells and maintain the great reputation our district has, knowing that removing this position would be threatening the lives of our students, increasing the stress of our staff, creating a disservice to our families, moving backwards in our district, and becoming another disappointing statistic in our state. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Olson, and I am the SEL specialist at Wildfire Elementary School. The importance of SEL in our school is paramount to the success of our students. Their mental health, along with their social and emotional well-being, is important for their growth and success, not only as students, but as they grow into the adults they will become. Our teachers are superheroes, you guys. They are dedicated, loving, and supportive. They have strong hearts and minds. But even a superhero's plate can overflow. And when you cut all of the instructional coaches and the SEL specialists, their plates are going to overflow again. And when you add more students to their room, it's going to be another thing that falls off their plate. And when that happens, how long are they going to be able to sustain that? And what's going to happen when they're not happy teaching and they can't handle all of the behaviors or all of the needs that are going on in the classroom? Our students are going to start suffering for that, and our teachers are going to suffer for that. How will our teachers being depleted and pushed to their limits affect the way that our students learn? And how will this affect the way that our students won't fall through the cracks? How will this affect our future leaders? You passed a district-wide initiative for PBIS within our schools. Thank you, by the way. I fully support that. But what happens to that initiative when you take away the SELs to support it at the schools? Because behavior is not going anywhere. Behavior is a communication call for help. It says I have a need. And as SEL specialists, we help to figure out what that need is. We teach students a better way to request help, and we teach students how they can meet that need. Thank you.
Sorry, I have a hard time seeing, so I need something bigger. Hello, my name is Loretta Sotelo, and I am a second grade teacher in the district at Palomino Primary. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. This is my 9th year in the district, and although I had to take a substantial pay cut coming from Cartwright School District, I was glad I made the switch. From the beginning of my tenure here, I enjoyed the community feel between the families and the staff at Paradise. I also treasured the way in which the board, cabinet, certified and classified employees work together to solve problems. I felt as though each group was heard and valued and that we were all on the same team. That's why I was surprised by the recent decision to adjust an agreed upon solution to the shortfall of funds in the district. The task force that devoted hours and hours of their own time to try to solve the issues in an equitable way was not shown the respect they deserved. Decisions were made without a final discussion, and that's not how it typically is done in our district. To add to that, the cuts that are being proposed are counterproductive and, in my opinion, will cause further harm to the population of teachers and students who have struggled to stay afloat for the last several years, including myself. Many teachers have recently left the profession because they didn't feel valued and heard, and others are hanging on by a thread with the challenges that the last few years have brought. Students have astronomical rates of anxiety and depression and are struggling to survive the pressures of school and home. The supports provided by the SEL specialists and the instructional coaches are essential for the overall success, for our overall success. If high test scores and A school scores are the ultimate goal, we can't achieve it without the positions that allow it to happen. Please return to the table with all parties to ensure that students and teachers are shown the respect they deserve.
Thank you.
After Tammy Newell will be Kelly Washburn, Linda Williamson, and Tracy Ronca.
Governing Board, Dr. Bales, Cabinet, thank you. My name is Tammy Newell, and I'm in my 16th year as a teacher in the district, the last 3 years as an instructional coach. Tonight, our Director of Assessment, Jean Copen, shared the wonderful news of our school letter grades. Following the social, emotional, and academic impact of COVID on PV teachers and students, coupled with the confirmation of learning loss identified on the nation's report card, the increase in school letter grades is worthy of celebration. But I ask you to reflect on a question. How do you think we got there? In Paradise Valley's new strategic plan, Goal 2, Staff Experience, states the following goals. 1, create professional learning opportunities that support individual growth. Develop and implement mentorship programs for all staff. Provide opportunities for staff to meaningfully collaborate with one another to serve the needs of every learner. I ask you to live up to that goal. Job-embedded professional development, such as the student-centered coaching model employed by Paradise Valley, meet these strategic plan goals. Our coaches are master teachers who have the ability to foster the trust necessary to support classroom teachers. Coaches provide personalized learning opportunities that meet teachers' needs in real time, provide targeted, non-evaluative instructional guidance, collaborate on Tier 1 instruction, Tier 2 intervention, research-based instructional strategies, and data-informed instructional decision-making to meet the needs of all learners in a particular teacher's classroom. The Economic Policy Institute lists teacher quality as the most important school-related factor influencing student achievement. Yet, due to the teacher shortage, Arizona has forced lower teacher qualification standards. Paradise Valley is no exception. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Washburn, and I am the SEL Specialist and PBIS Coordinator at North Canyon High School. First, I would like to direct those in Cabinet leadership. I am feeling very undervalued and unsupported by the budget revision that was released on Tuesday. I feel a lot of responsibility is being placed on employees, families, students, and our community for the misplacement of funds. I ask all of you in Cabinet if you are holding yourself to the same accountability that you are placing onto others. Second, I would like to address how our students will be affected by this change. All of us are able to move forward and find new jobs, but the children in this community will be the ones who are impacted the most. More responsibility will be placed on teachers, administrators, nurses, etc., leading to less support and more students to end up falling through the cracks. So far this school year, I've had over 100 minor behavior incident conferences, facilitated close to 50 mediations, check in on a regular basis with 40 to 50 students, have referred or provided outside resources to over 20 students and families, responded to over 15 crisis calls, and provided immediate intervention to a student after they had self-harmed in a campus bathroom. We do not want to believe these situations like these are occurring at school, but it is our reality. How do we move forward as a district knowing we are intentionally taking away from our students one of the only positive emotional and behavior supports available? I have dealt with my own personal mental health struggles, which makes this more than just a job to me. It is a passion. Working with the students at North Canyon High School gives my life a greater purpose. I hope you understand the severity this will have on all of our district as a whole and all of the students you will ultimately be disservicing by making this change. Thank you for listening.
Good evening, President Ventura, the board, Dr. Bales, and the cabinet. My name is Linda Williamson, and I am the SEL at Shadow Mountain High School, who wonderfully performed tonight. And I'm here to appeal to the board to keep the position of SEL, not only for myself, but for my fellow colleagues. I have I have the passion to help young people combat trauma, and it's becoming increasingly evident from my experience with working at Taros for 7 years prior to here, uh, trying to reunify families um, who have experienced substance use, and the the age of my clients were getting younger and younger, and I left a very high-paying position to come to work as an SEL to help mitigate people coming to those groups and later in life. After 2.5 years at Shadow Mountain, it is clear that my job has significant value, and I've helped pave the way for hundreds of students to experience academic and personal success. Let me give you some examples of my responsibilities. I provide individual and much needed support to students and staff and parents. I created 3 groups: Conquer the Mountain, Shadow Mountain Senior Transition, and collaborated with Shea Middle School for an 8th grade transition group. Champion Team Thrive, a faculty mentor support program for struggling students with one-on-one intervention for students. Support a 3-person counseling staff by coordinating efforts to assist students with personal trauma. However, I often take on the students without the need to involve the counselor. This has proved to be extremely, oh, well, anyway.
Our final speakers after Ms. Ronco will be Henry Hill, Stacy Alejo, and Kevin Alavian.
Good evening, Madam President, governing board members, and cabinet. My name is Tracy Ronka, and currently I'm just a kindergarten teacher at Sunset Canyon. And every day is a brand new experience. It's awesome. I love it. And as I'm proceeding through this current year, I am being supported by SEL specialist and our instructional coach. And to my dismay, I found out, and my great concern, that these positions are being considered for elimination. I couldn't imagine doing this without that team behind me. With the amount of new teachers that are coming in and experienced teachers that are moving into the new grades, I'm unsure how they're going to be able to make all those ends meet. We absolutely need the support from these SEL specialists and the instructional coach to teach kids with fidelity. I do believe the theory presented by Abraham Maslow is true, that before individuals meet their full potential, they need to satisfy the needs, these series of needs that they have to have in order to learn. Our efforts to close these gaps due to recent challenges, due to sickness, quarantine, distance learning, are slowed due to social emotional events and presented by children who are readjusting to social norms in the learning environment. The SEL specialists and the instructional coaches have been instrumental in helping my students learn and adjust to learning in this environment and becoming learners that are going to impact them for the rest of their academic career. Why would we not examine retaining SEL positions, instructional coaches? I don't know why we wouldn't re-examine that, and increasing the class size by 1. And why would we not give such a large percentage of pay increase to administrative positions when everybody is struggling too? It's just on my, it's just, I don't know.
And I won't say anything more about the SEL and the coaches. I think the previous speakers and participants have spoken very eloquently about that, and I fully support them and what they're doing. I want to thank the work of the Budget Committee. It's had been extremely hard, and I really applaud that they had people that put in that work to come up with these recommendations that were not easy. We're all in a very difficult place with this, and it really does lie with this group here to make a decision. And I appreciate the fact that you listened to our input on this, but I do want you to look at this. Think about if you had known that the 14 million wasn't there 8 months ago when you were in your budget process. I recommend you look at it through that lens of where you can do everything. I believe what you saw from your budget committee took that approach. I really don't want you to go to the point that what's the easy way, and frankly, what's the politically expedient way to address this. It's not fair to the district, it's not fair to the students, and I don't think it upholds what you signed up to do by being part of this group. So I really do ask for you to go back, look at those recommendations, and you may even find something different to do if you put yourself in the mindset and the lens of what would I have done had I known this at the beginning of the process. Thank you.
Hello. Good evening, Governing Board, Dr. Bales, President Ventura, and Cabinet. I'm Stacy Alejo. I work over at Greenway Middle School. This is my 7th year. I am going to talk about the importance of the SEL specialists and the instructional coaches tonight, even though my colleagues back there did speak so eloquently about them. To start, as you guys know, I was here about a month ago talking about how great Greenway has been and how much improvement we have made. And I know our admin is great, our teachers are great, but a lot of the reason why we are where we are is because of the people working behind the scenes. And when we received the news that the positions were being cut, hearts on our campus were severely heavy that day. They were shattered. Our instructional coaches and our SEL specialists empower our teachers day in and day out, and they support our students and staff in every way possible. Our instructional coaches work with our new teachers, like you've met earlier tonight, and they have worked with them from the beginning to the end. They model lessons for them, and then they stay with them throughout the entire day to make sure they go well. They support our staff in new curriculum and work with them on engagement strategies. They model lessons, like I said, and they run PDs for our staff and answer questions at all hours of the day and all hours of the night. When you need help figuring out how to organize your classroom, you call the instructional coach. When you need to figure out how to scaffold and differentiate a complex lesson, you call the instructional coach. Again, during the day and at night. And they answer. And if we want teachers to stay in this district, we need them. We need them terribly. And while we have our coaches supporting our teachers, we also have our SEL specialists supporting our students. Students who may not have coping skills to deal with difficult situations, students who would rather, like they said before, not live another day. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Alavian, and I'm here with my 3 kids to support our teachers and the SEL program. Thank you. Thank you. We lost their mom last year due to cancer, and in the last year, the SEL staff has been just wonderful. The skills they've learned this period has been just that's how I learned about it really. And so to just yesterday I learned that it's being taken away. It kind of makes me a little quite angry actually, because there's so many benefits to this. I'm sorry I didn't really prepare for this, but when we look at mental health, you look at some teen drug abuse. What's the cause of that? It's because they didn't know how to deal with their emotions. Maybe they're self-medicating. Drugs, major problem in colleges, high schools. It's because they're self-medicating. They need more help than that. That's where the SEL people come in. School shootings. Okay, all these kids that have mental problems, everybody blames guns or not guns, whatever. But everybody agrees mental health is a problem. Well, how much money do we spend on these active shooter drills? Why not put that into mental health instead? Prevent the problem. And so I'm a business owner. I understand the importance of budgeting, and sometimes I've done this. You try to save the money there, it costs you $100 later on. And that's exactly what you guys are doing, except it's not dollars, it's somebody's life. It's some kid who dies because of alcohol abuse, drug abuse, suicide, active shooter, other people's like that. And you guys have to think that you take that away, it will happen. It will happen to someone because they didn't get that care when they needed it. And you have to look in the mirror and live with it.
Those were all of our comments for this evening. Thank you for everyone who took time to come and speak to us and let us know what is on your mind and what you're feeling. I appreciate being able to hear from all of you tonight. And now we will open the discussion among the board. Mr. Laney.
All right, I'll lead it off with some comments and then we can get into our discussion. So I appreciate all of the emails, the online comments that everybody sent to the board. We do see those. I spent yesterday and today reading them all, so I really appreciate those. Decisions are never taken lightly by the board or discussions. Over the last year, I've been able to see the thought and passion each member has put into their decisions and know that although we can disagree, that all of us have tried to do our best when weighing choices on how they will impact our first responsibility. Our first responsibilities to every child in our school district. My thoughts on this matter do not come lightly. Many of you may not know this, but my wife's brother has Down syndrome. So when my wife and I were first married, I had the opportunity of watching him receive a standing ovation as he graduated high school. I've also had conversations with one of my best friends about this issue. His son has autism and has benefited greatly in early childhood from these types of programs. Not only that, but I know that this will probably affect my own child as she is in a class with not only a new teacher, but a teacher who is new to the US. And in my tours through the school district, when I was meeting with the principals, many of you may know, many of you were told a little bit of my history as a kid. And to be quite frank, I personally would have rather spent time with an SEL specialist than getting paddled in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and then borderline abuse in 5th grade, which you can ask me about that story later on. So I just wanted to lead off the discussion with my comments, and I know we had a lot of questions, so I'll leave it to the next person and we can start our questions.
Mrs. Bacon?
Yes, I have a lot of questions, but I do want to do kind of what Mr. Laney did with the level set of my background and my thoughts on both of these positions. So my background is in social work. I have a master's degree in social work. I, like one of our speakers, had to console a student body when a student was murdered as a social worker. I understand the importance of SEL. You can ask anyone sitting on this board or anyone who knows me, and I will say the single thing that we should have done since I sat on this board is have a social worker, at least one in every single site. I also mentioned that I helped run the override. And one of the promises that we made, and that many of us talked to our neighbors, family members, constituents, we knocked on doors,
and we said we wouldn't raise class sizes if the override passed. I don't know where the answer is. I hope there is some compromise that we can come to. But we have had success in override and bond passage because we have lived up to the promises that we made. This is an issue. There's not a way to cut this money, this much money, without going into salaries and benefits. I don't know the answer yet, but I want you to know that neither of these options is something I want. Do I want more students in classrooms? No. Do I want to lose SEL and instructional coaches? No, I don't. My responsibility is to make sure that we balance a budget. How do we do that? And that is a great question. And the committee looked at that. So they came to us with these two major ways to cut budget shortfall. Neither one is good. So we've got to figure out what we can live with. And I don't know that anyone can. We're going to lose teachers if we increase class size. We're going to lose teachers if we do this. We do know that. We do know that. So if you think you I know that this looks easy and it looks like we're just sitting up here making cavalier decisions. We are not doing that. This is a discussion. This is not a time to make a decision. We're not here to make a decision about this. We're here to have a conversation. And I think that's what I want to do. The other thing I want to say is, I know that when mistakes are made in classrooms by students, we ask them, how can you solve this problem? That's what we're trying to do. A mistake was made. You're right. How do we solve it? We can't go back and change it. We have to move forward. So those are just some baseline comments that I wanted to just put out there before we had a lot of questions.
Nancy? Oh, Mrs. Case, I'm sorry.
That's fine. This is my 18th year on the board. I've been through extreme heavy cuts before. It is the worst part of being on the board. It's absolutely yucky. If you know my background at all, reading is my thing, and making sure children can read well is what I'm all about, and that they love to read. Back in, I don't even know when it was, 08 or something like that nature, we had to cut reading specialists. I felt like I was cutting off an arm. It was the horrible thing that we went through. Cuts are never, ever easy. None of these are something I want to do. I don't want to have more students in the classroom. I teach in the summertime. The more kids there are, the less individual help they can have. Getting rid of SEL or instructional coaches, it's a horrible thing to do. We are listening to you. I do have a question for Mrs. Berrigan. Could you explain in more detail what a shortfall means?
Currently, the shortfall that we're experiencing, if it's not resolved, it's what's considered a structural deficit, meaning that at some point we run out of funds to meet the current expenditures that we have. We'd be put in an over expenditure situation. And that's not allowed in school districts, nor good budgeting practice.
Okay, so let me just kind of go through this process and you tell me if I have the correct understanding, okay? an error was made in the way the 14 million, I'm going to round numbers, the 14 million was put into the system. It wasn't shenanigans. Nobody was absconding money. There was nothing of that nature. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Okay. So it was put into a wrong category because there was money coming in through COVID, ESSER funds, et cetera. It's my understanding we took that 14 million and gave pay raises to staff. Is that correct? A lot of it went to that. Instead of making cuts, we were able to do some things of that nature. Even we were able to do some programs to help and continue with SELs and et cetera. I mean, that money was used for the benefit of students. And now we have to go back and take care of the accounting part of it, and we have to make cuts. It wasn't like we were, I don't know, wasting it on good things. I mean, we're spending that money on good projects.
Correct.
And so now we have to pay the price for having that money spent in the past.
Yeah, I think the simplest way to phrase that is that the district should have reduced $14 million out of his budgeted expenditures for the 21-22 school year. Because
Okay.
that's, we no longer had that ESG money to support those expenditures.
Okay, but nothing nefarious. My point of this is nothing nefarious happened with those funds.
That's correct.
It was put into a wrong category.
That's correct.
Okay, I wanted that to be better understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Greenberg?
Thank you. Usually I prepare something. I am not very good at off the cuff, so that's why you usually see me reading. And I didn't, because I did want to hear what people had to say. And I want to thank everybody who came to address us and give us your input and your personal experiences and your feedback. And that is important. And I want to thank anybody who took the time to contact us, because we did. We received a number of letters, and I know, like my colleagues up here, we read every single one of them. And, you know, I speak last and I go, I'm just going to, mirror what somebody said. But I think Mrs. Bacon said it, the best. I mean, this is not easy. I've also served on this board as long as Mrs. Case, and when the recession hit, this was an annual process we went through, as did every school district, because funding from the state dried up, essentially. I mean, what was considered essential one year had to go the next year. I mean, it has not, it's never easy. And none of it is a good solution. There's literally nothing that is a good solution, in my opinion, because everything we do is for the benefit of our students and our staff and our families and our community. So there is never an ideal solution. And no matter what we come up with, I can't imagine that somebody is not going to be affected and consider it, a negative. But we will work through this to figure out what we can do. We will work through it to figure out a solution that best supports our strategic plan, I believe, going forward, and use that to guide us. I don't want to sound Pollyannish, but maybe I will be. I do believe now that the elections are over, I have more hope going into the new year that perhaps on a state level with new leadership in the executive branch and, new state senators and representatives, that perhaps the value of public education will increase. And we will see that in a bottom line that may also help this process. But I will stop there because I do think we all have questions that we need to get answered, and I will turn it back to Mrs. Matura.
I do want to say, for people who are unaware of how the board works, sometimes there's questions, and people may feel that, you know, the board has come tonight with a conclusion, and I can assure you that none of us have a conclusion in mind. This is a no-win situation that we are in. And for many of you in the room know this, but many people are not aware that, you know, we have not talked about this. We are not able to speak about this. We can't ask questions and run these ideas around behind the scenes. We're not, tonight we are hearing from each other. We have heard from you. We're going to be hearing, we're going to be directing questions to Mrs. Berrigan and to Dr. Bales, but we are hearing this information and asking questions and hearing each other and being able to work with our colleagues right now. You are watching the work happen. This is not some foregone conclusion. This is not something that's been decided. So you're going to watch the process. So as we are asking questions and hearing things, this is genuine questions that we have and genuine information that we need to be able to discuss with our colleagues tonight, and to hear ideas flowing and come to some sort of idea of what the next step can be. So this is not, we're not just up here, you know, as a show with the foregone conclusion. This is not what's happening. You are watching this happen. You are watching what our questions are and how we're interacting with our colleagues this evening. Mrs. Berrigan, I do want to ask a question because I think this is something that I asked a while ago and just want clarification that, so when the employee stabilization grant came in about $14 million way back when, and that was, you know, a pot of money that some expenses had to be moved over to match the pot of money, and were used for that one time. When that didn't move back, it wasn't like there was this magical $14 million and we thought, oh, wow, we have this extra $14 million. What should we do with it? Because at the time, there was additional funding coming in from federal, state, ESSER grants. So it wasn't this dollar for dollar where it matched up and you said, oh, not you, you weren't even here, sorry. Where someone would look and say, how come this isn't matching up? Because this doesn't match from last year, because the numbers are constantly changing. And in the way that we are budgeted by the state, we are in a current year budget. So our budget constantly, we never know what our budget was for the year until the year is already over. And at that point in time, so the numbers never, it's not what you can do in your home and realize that in your home budget where you can see where the money came in and where it went out as quickly because of all of this extra money was coming in at the same time. And so we thought there was additional funding. We're able to add programs that would support our students at the time. And we're adding those programs, but we thought, looking at it, it was new money coming in, not realizing that there was this money left over here overhanging. Am I correct that the new funding was coming in at the same time?
You have a correct understanding.
Okay, so I just wanted to let that be known that it wasn't that, you know, you could just look on paper and realize, and that we were fortunate that, you know, in coming through and when it was found, and we started working on it immediately when that was noticed, and that happened before you were here and you were able to work with your staff to kind of identify that. So thank you. Mrs. Bacon?
I don't want to interrupt you. Okay. So I do have a couple of questions. I guess the first one is, what else can we do to make up these resources? For example, could we change our health insurance coverage? We could not pay as much, or we could make employees pay and we contribute nothing. There are things that we can do, but remembering that 85 to 87% of our M&O budget is salaries and benefits, there's not a lot of wiggle room outside of that. So there are other things we could do, and the committee looked at 40 plus,
70-ish.
70 plus items to start with, and took a bunch of them off the table because they're not things they wanted to see, anyone wanted to see. So I agree with Mrs. Greenberg. I wonder if we're going to see a friendlier budget cycle, given Governor Hobbs and some of the legislators that were elected to represent Paradise Valley schools. I've said that before and it's never really come through. So I really hesitate to say that, but I am hopeful that that will happen. The other thing that occurs to me is when we talk about MTSS, we talk about using data to inform instruction. And I wonder if we should be using data to inform these decisions. So where is, thank you, that one person who thought that was good. Really appreciate that. Thank you. But I wonder if we should be looking at the schools that have significant discipline issues. Maybe we don't get rid of those SELs. Or maybe we look at schools that, it's ironic and no one up here wants to talk about this and the cabinet doesn't want this either. It is terrible that we're having this conversation when we just celebrated such good news. And we know that every single person contributed to that. There's no doubt about that. But can we figure out a way that works and split the difference? So we have two big items that we can look at. How do we take those and do what's best for each site instead of a blanket, this is what we're going to do? So that's just one thing that I wanted to mention. I also wonder, we really didn't have any parents represented on that committee. And it wasn't necessarily appropriate to have them on that committee because it really was around employee issues and could have provided maybe some information that I don't know. But I do wonder if we should be talking to parents about what they would prefer in addition. So, but the solution isn't neither, right? The solution is one or the other. And maybe we do that. So I personally think we need more feedback. But that is where I stand at this moment.
Mr. Laney?
Thank you. So you're suggesting a hybrid type system?
Yeah, I'm suggesting not a one size fits all.
Yeah, okay. I like that idea too. When I actually talked with an administrator today who this would affect her school immediately. She would lose both the instructional coach and the SEL specialist, where other schools it wouldn't affect them at all. And so I would like to, well, I shouldn't say it that way. Gotcha. It wouldn't affect them as much. Where other schools, the increasing class size, which another word for that is letting go teachers or removing classes, so whole classes, getting rid of those, it would affect those schools a lot more. And so I agree with what you're saying, would like to see some type of hybrid approach where we can help the schools that need the most and work with the class sizes on the schools that can work with it.
So my thought with I mean, there's room. So some schools are, right up to the limit with their class sizes, and some wouldn't see a change in the class size if they were to increase it by one because there isn't one student to do so. However, if the idea were let's work with the schools and increase class size on paper for the ones that it wouldn't change, then there wouldn't be a reduction in staff, which would be a zero reduction on the budget line item, which wouldn't fix the problem. So there's that concern there too. And also something to think about with the increase in class size, again, on top of the idea that this was talked about in the override as something that wouldn't be touched. Additionally, when people think in concept, well, it's just one more person, one more student, what difference will it make? However, what this actually looks like is when a whole classroom is collapsed. And now those classrooms have, 8 more students. And it technically still fits within what that limit is because you raised it by 1, but each of the class sizes now has gone up by 8. So it's not just 1 more student, because in order for it to actually to financially work out to the dollar amount that we're seeing on paper, it's the expectation that that many classrooms would be collapsed and all of those students would be redistributed among those the additional classrooms. So it wouldn't look like on paper it would be 1, but in actuality, something we saw at the beginning of the year when classrooms were collapsed and parents were concerned because the class sizes increased dramatically, and yet those were all still under the limit of what we currently have. And so I just want that to be out there Mr. Laney.
Yeah, the 1 is just an average. And as we know with averages, they don't represent the real story if anybody's taken statistics. So yeah, that makes perfectly good sense.
Mrs. Case?
I appreciate my fellow board members' comments. This is an ongoing discussion. We have not made up our minds. I appreciate hearing from all of you and your comments. And this is just really, really hard. There's nothing easy about it. I've gone through this process, and year after year would make cuts one year and the next year would have to make more cuts. And we could, as was mentioned, we were hopeful that perhaps education will receive more money, but we can't base budgets on hope. It has to be more concrete. And so we have to make hard choices even though we don't want to do that. There is no easy answers in this process, any shape or form. And so, and it's my understanding that as the task force was working on it, they would put things in and off the list because it is very, very hard to know what to do. So, and I have to say also, one of the goals since I've been on the board was to get back to smaller class sizes. And that process has taken years to do, whittling off things, moving here. And that is what we were told by the community that they wanted. They wanted smaller class sizes. And so that goal of having that happen, was it a year ago or 2 years ago that we finally got the class size lowered? I can't remember. Was that?
It's been several years ago that we've been whittling it down. It changed over time.
It changed over time. Okay, so we might have started at 29, got it to 28. So it was a process to get to where we used to have class sizes. So none of this is easy, but some of you might not have known the history of the class sizes. This has been an ongoing goal of this board, that we would make class sizes back to what they were at one time before we had all the budgets cuts. It's very hard.
Mr. Laney?
I have a couple hypothetical questions. So if this were to go as it is right now, how many SEL and instructional coaches would we still have? Would we still have them?
There's 13.5 that would still remain that are ESSER funded or title funded.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. For next year. I mean, that's what we talk about.
All right. So my other question, and remember, this is just, we're having a discussion here. So does this change anything in regards to IEPs?
In terms of, well, we don't write people into IEPs, but Dr. Corson maybe can help me here. We write in service minutes. And so, as a team, our teachers, our support staff are all part of providing those service minutes.
Well, let me rephrase the question. Would this deny any kid that wants to have an IEP or needs an IEP the ability to have one?
It will not.
Okay, that was what I wanted to know.
Mrs. Greenberg?
This may not be a very popular question. Um, as we heard at least, a couple times this evening, there was, I'm not really sure of a great way to put this. There was a concern that teachers would lose their voice, that this was outside of the bargaining agreement process, or that this was dismissing the bargaining agreement process that we have. So I don't know if it's Mrs. Bergen or Dr. Holmes or Dr. Bales. Can you answer, is this did we violate the bargaining agreement, or, I mean, what happened? Can I get the question answered, please? Thank you.
Yeah, Mrs. Greenberg, the process that was established was not a interest-based negotiations process. We typically do that in the spring. We do those individually with the groups. This process was a budget task force. It was all of the representatives were together on the same work group, and they were charged with the two goals that we talked about. From the very beginning, the task force was established to, number one, address the budget shortfall. That was established in early June as the process. We communicated that to all the employees. We communicated to the board the process, and I've shared that, in other circles. At the end of June, when the governor and the legislature adopted a budget that provided additional revenues that had not been planned, then we asked that the budget task force address the second goal. So the first goal was to address the shortfall. The second goal was to provide additional compensation. Even though the additional compensation from the budget is almost equivalent, right, to the shortfall, and that would certainly be one option, no cuts, and it's all there, then we're not doing what was the intent of the additional revenue, and that's pass along compensation to the employees. That's why they were charged with the second part of this, was to come up with some ongoing recommendations so that we could provide additional compensation. One of the things that we are struggling with is filling vacancies in all areas. And this gives us an opportunity to provide additional compensation to be more competitive. It's only putting a dent in it. It is not enough. But to do nothing also raises concerns, because we have a community that says, what are you doing? And we are not in charge of revenue. The revenue is determined by the state legislature. It comes to us on our average daily membership by kids. We're in charge of our expenditures, and that's what we have to do, is we have to find a way. And using Mr. Hill's lens from 2 years ago, right? What would we have done? We would have made the reductions at that time in staffing and or compensation to be commensurate with our expenditures and our budget in planning for 21-22. So the same conversation we're having now about what would we have reduced would have happened, should have happened in that budgeting planning process for 21-22, before Ms. Berrican came on board, before I was a superintendent. Those are the conversations. And so we would have had the same conversation then as we are now, because we had expenditures at that time that we needed to adjust, and we hadn't done it then. This is the same process we would have used now.
Okay, so so we're about to enter into our our IBN and start the budgeting process for 23, 24. I'm messing years up. 23, 24. And what this is saying is we're making recommendations that this is already, we're not cutting positions for this year.
These are positions that are recommended for the 23-24 school year. All of the recommendations, most of them from the task force, the revisions from cabinet, are all effective for July 1st. Those are equivalent to have the additional revenue of $14 million, right? We're using about almost $9 million of it to cover the ongoing revenue expenditures. And then there's $5 million that is through the cuts for ongoing. That's how it kind of balances. All right. But that $5 million this year is the one-time money. The ongoing cuts beginning July 1st is how we solve it moving forward. It creates a level playing field going into bargaining with a surplus, with the cabinet recommendations, with a surplus of about $122,000 versus going into the bargaining spring session with either the entire $14 million to identify in a short period of time and or to identify a $950,000 deficit that didn't meet goal from the original recommendations from the task force. So either way, if we make decisions in the spring about letting people go, changing positions, because remember, 85% of our budget is in salary and benefits. So any reductions in programs and services is people. That's what we provide. We provide people. So when we have those conversations in the spring through bargaining, we run against timelines, right? We don't know what the state legislature is going to give us. We have timelines in statute to notify people about continuing contracts. And if they don't know what their assignment's going to be the following year, then they get nervous, they look elsewhere. This decision gives people notice, all right? It brings closure to the deficit. It brings closure to the compensation for this year. It starts in the spring. When we go to bargaining in the spring, we have a whole host of things. There's always an interest. There's interest in new positions. There's interest in changing language for one thing or another. So there's always opportunity for us to talk about bringing new positions back, bringing positions back that have been cut, adding positions. That's always been a part of the process through bargaining.
But this does not touch anything for this year.
This does not touch anything for the current year, current calendar school year. Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to piggyback on that, because that's something, Dr. Bales, that I was going to bring up, is the idea that starting over the process for the year, either, with the $100,000 positive, or, in the other case, it was the $950,000 or the $14 million going in, is that time crunch. And the idea of not wanting, if there's a way to let people know earlier in the process so they can plan to find different positions, plan for those things now, because there's $14 million of cuts coming. So if there's time on our side right now to allow those people to know what's coming down, as opposed to learning at the end of bargaining what's falling out, that we trying to give people more time is something that is important as well. And so I'm glad you brought that up. That if you just push this all down the road into bargaining, then there's no reconciliation. We don't know how much there's the funding we want to be able to give to the employees now. And so all of those, and having that timeline is, and giving people more time and able to find different positions within the district is an important piece of this that I think we do need to consider. Mrs. Case?
What you were talking about was what I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to approach it a little bit different angle. Bargaining normally starts in January, as I recall, but we have to, is that correct, Dr. Bells?
Yeah, end of January, 1st of February.
End of January.
We typically start at that time when we start to have a better idea of the numbers that are going to be available to us, right? It isn't until end of February that we sometimes have numbers about our increased costs for medical insurance, dental, vision, all those kinds of things that would be either employee or employer-related costs. We don't have an idea of what the legislature right now. We're capped at 2%, so that we can hope that with 8 to 13% inflation in this county, that they'll go beyond that. But that's somebody else's crystal ball, not mine. So there's just so many unknowns already going into this spring session. As I said earlier, this is difficult because we don't have a crystal ball, right? It's unclear. We know we're going to have increased expenses. And so this is just the beginning, unfortunately. If I put a number to it, and Ms. Berrigan won't let me do that because, she doesn't want to be held to it, but it's possible that we start in January talking about another $7 or $8 million in deficits because of the increased costs that we anticipate. Goods and services are going to go up. We haven't had those because of contracts with us. They haven't been passing along all those things over the last year to us. You know, the contracts that are renewed for custodial services are going to go up. We anticipate those things, and we can't put an exact number on it until much later in the spring. So while we can hope that the legislature can give us more money, we may not know until June 30th. And we have statutory requirements to issue contracts to certified employees by May. That's why we always come back to the board and do our contract work at the end of April. We issue contracts, 15-day requirement to get them back, et cetera. So we have all these timelines, and you know, we can eliminate administrative raises. There's $200,000 of that's the 2%. It doesn't get us to $7 million. It doesn't even get us close. We have to find avenues, and it will be, if it's not these positions, there'll be somebody else's positions, right? And they will be here talking to you also.
So the reason that we need to go quickly is because of those timelines. Instead of taking 2 or 3 more months to do this, we have to come to some conclusions now, because there's decisions that have to be made in the future that build on one on top of another.
I think it would be helpful going into bargaining, having some of these decisions made, but it's not a requirement. If that's not what you want us to do, we don't have to.
Okay. And
We won't be able to provide the additional compensation if it's not resolved this year.
Okay. So that's a question I have. If this is resolved, we can give the compensation, but the cuts don't happen until next year.
Correct.
So there are 2 different budget years that we're talking about, the compensation and the cuts. So why do we have to do one and not the other? Why do we have to do both? I don't think we have to do both. We don't have to do both.
We have to come up with a plan for the ongoing cuts.
Right.
Which-
We can,
which
but we
is-
can roll that into bargaining. If we
then, okay, we can.
Yeah.
And so that number would be $5 million.
Right.
Right? And so we would start as a deficit in bargaining with $5 million plus the other that I just gave that very ugly picture for. So it is possible.
It is possible. And if it's more palatable, do we consider it? If employees don't think that this process was honored, which I don't agree or disagree with, I'm just making an observation. Is it better that we send it to bargaining? And they're not going to be any changes. The same things are going to be on the cutting block. That's not going to change. It's going to go into bargaining, and you will, in fact, as Mrs. Matura said, have less notice to find other positions or find a position in the district. So
we will not be able to make our current bargain language has assignments to teachers by February something or whatever, tentative assignments. We won't be able to make that. So people will be left unknown.
Okay.
And that's okay if that's what they want.
If that's okay, then okay. But I don't know that we fully know what employees would want in terms of that. So that's just something I think we have to think about that. That's all. That's it. Thank you.
so by having the budget task force, we were trying to preempt not having anything to bargain. Is that kind of, right, to have negative in bargaining, because it's not a win-win situation. This is
Correct.
just really, really hard. And so we're trying to make some decisions now so that we have a little bit of choice in the future, but none of it, there's negatives no matter how you cut it.
The other thing that, I have been thinking a lot about because of the fact that I'm going off the board very shortly is we're making a decision that another board is going to have to live with, and a different majority board. So that's something that I keep thinking about too. Should we be making this decision right now? I mean, the pros are they have a fresh start and don't have to, come on with this. And the pros are we're experienced board members. The cons are they have to live with our decision. And that's not easy. And the cons are they don't have experience making these decisions. And there's a lot of information you have to learn as a brand new board member. So to be up to speed as quickly as they would need to be, I think would be difficult. It would have been difficult for me. It would be difficult for any human being. So those are just some other thoughts that I am having, like what's the right thing in terms of that?
I'm going to call on Mr. Laney in one moment, but I do want to take a moment just to remind something that Dr. Bales did point out was that because the decisions are going into effect the following year, that doing something timely now it still leaves everything on the table in bargaining. That anything that is any notice or anything that is changed now in order to allow bargaining to go in with not the entire shortfall, if it moves forward with that kind of balanced, that things can be added back in bargaining and different things can come off depending on what wants to be added back. So it allows those changes to continue to happen, but without hampering with that huge dollar amount to start with. And giving people time and allowing some of those things that traditionally happen with being able to give some of those staffing things in February that are traditional. So that's just another wrinkle in there that I was thinking about. But Mr. Laney had a comment or question or thoughts.
Yeah, I personally don't like putting off for tomorrow what you can do today, even if it's tough. And, and I do fully understand what it's like to come to this position, as my onboarding was the day of my first meeting. And then I'm sitting up here and trying to make decisions, and not knowing much at all. So I like the idea of taking care of it this year so that they can have the ability to have time to learn and come on and take care of things, because I know that they will have some choices and decisions to make too, because things keep changing.
Mrs. Greenberg.
So basically what we're saying is that no matter what the recommendation is made, and say we proceed with the process and final recommendations are presented to us December 1st for approval, and let's say we approve them. So what we're saying is it is our intent for 23, 24 that this is what we're doing, whatever this is, whether it's what's here, whatever, different recommendations. And then bargaining starts and we realize, okay, we can add something back in. What would that look like? Do you need to come back to the board to say that? Or does it just happen through bargaining?
So if we don't resolve the issue right now, and
I'm saying we do. I'm saying whatever comes before us, December 1, whatever it is, and it sounds more like maybe it's a hybrid of whatever, but we make a decision so that bargaining starts with positive balance, or a smaller balance than 5 million, whatever. And we achieve that by doing A, B, and C. And then bargaining starts and C wants to get put back on the table, whatever C is. Does the fact that we have approved taking C off the table Can it go back on the table in bargaining?
I believe it can. I think that we just have to expect that the bargaining teams have to identify a funding source for that.
Okay.
That there has to be a funding source. And it doesn't necessarily have to wait for the whole compensation package to be approved at the end of April or such like that. But if there's an identifiable funding source for that we have, then whatever C is can be added into that bargaining process. Ms. Bergen, do you want to comment? Am I making you nervous with anything?
No.
Okay.
We're all making her nervous.
Yes.
Thank you.
I guess, given that answer, the request is to prioritize where we think cuts should be made. Is that really what we're doing? Because if we can then turn to bargaining and bargaining can say, wait, we want that back, and there's no problem with that if, as you said, a funding source can be found to put that back, then these are recommendations. Now, ultimately, it's likely they would happen unless the legislature is more beneficent than it's been. But taking them off the table doesn't mean they can't go back and bargaining.
We make adjustments to our allocations, our priorities every year.
Okay.
And so, yes, it could come back in through the bargaining process. The challenge will be, and I don't want to mislead anybody, the challenge will be, what revenues are going to be available in the spring.
Right.
Because there will be these increased expenses and expenditures already. And then if you want to add something back in, there's a cost to that. So that it's possible, but we just have to make sure that we understand all of the factors related to what we want to bring back, how we're going to pay for it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Case?
From the M&O, we pay for all of our water and we pay for our electricity, and all of those things are going up. And so that comes out of the same pot as salaries and benefits. Are those a lot of the biggest expenses of that?
Yeah, the largest expense is employee salaries, followed by benefits, followed by our utility costs.
Utilities.
And
Yeah.
we are looking, in just rough estimates, we are projecting about a 5% increase in utilities. Don't know if that's going to be accurate or not, but that's kind of what we're using for initial budget purposes.
Correct. We had about a 3% last year, and that
And
generally goes up
5%
every
is
year.
equal to about how many dollars?
I think it's 555,000. I have a
Okay.
picture in my head, so I think that's what it is.
And-
And that's a line on the budget preparation for
And-
23-24.
And all of this is with decrease in, like we've heard from, there's a decrease in birth rates, which goes to a decrease in students, which goes into less money.
That's
So
correct.
we're dealing with a declining enrollment
Mhm.
on a continuous basis
Mhm.
with no hope down the road.
So that's one of those parts, to the budgeting process, right? We did not plan for the 268 students that the demographer thought that we would lose this year. And yet we were down,
This year,
yep,
we're down around 800.
around 800. Okay, so that's a really significant hit to the current year budget because we were going to do zero budgeting on zero decline. And so we thought we'll take the risk. I think, but then it came in 800 kids fewer. We're 1,000 kids fewer today than we were a year ago. We are 3,000 kids fewer than we were 3 years ago. And if we, in good stewards of the taxpayer dollars, plan for the demographer's projection of 505 students fewer next year, that 505 students is equal to how much money?
Right now, we're looking at around $3.5 million.
$3.5 million. So that's part of going into the budgeting process for next year. If we account for 5% in utilities increases, we account for the 505 students fewer next year. If we do projections on, what might there be in terms of medical insurance costs, do we pass those along or do we not? We've been blessed to not pass along costs on the medical side for the employee-only plan. I believe, Dr. Harms, if you can remind me, the employee-only plan on the medical side hasn't changed in 3 years? Okay. There has been changes for those that have dependents and things like that, of course, but for the employee-only, that's almost unheard of. I don't think any of us could predict that that will happen again, especially with everything else that's going about around us. So whatever dollars that we think we're going to have in the spring to plan for the fall is already a growing deficit.
Dr. Bells, as to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money, I don't think we can push this down the road because we're going to have to make some hard decisions. And as Mr. Laney said, when he came onto the board brand new, the learning curve was pretty steep. And now he's gone through lots of different meetings and learned things that new people won't have. I don't think we can push it down the road. And I don't know how we're going to acquire quickly the information we need to make the decision. So I don't know how that can happen where we can get some feedback quickly that's accurate. We heard some amazing emotional stories tonight that were very valid. But we're talking, we have to look at the money situation. It's just difficult.
Mrs. Case, I appreciate those comments because I share the sentiment. For those of you that know me, you know that I deeply care about the emotional health of our students and staff. I've dedicated the last 8 years to my volunteer time. My wife and I make serious donations to Teen Lifeline. I've served on the board. I deeply care about our kids' emotional health and safety. These are not easy decisions. And whatever decisions we make will touch a person somehow, some way in our district. Whatever positions we end up making a decision on will touch somebody, unfortunately. That's not easy. And the work of the task force was not easy. You know, all of us, there's what, 35 or 45 people still left in the room. If all of us could come up with our recommendation, if you could wave a wand, there'd probably be 45 different decisions in here. And there was a lot of work done to get to that point. 70 plus unique ideas started in their work. And only one that we eliminated from the recommendations as a cabinet was the class size recommendation. We added 2 back. Please don't interrupt. We added 2 back that had been discussed at deep length, and we're along in that process. But that's water under the bridge. In the end, they came to consensus on the recommendation. We've added other options for the board to discuss. That's what we're here for tonight. Your comments, your questions, your suggestions will influence what we recommend in the future. It would be my recommendation to not do the class size, and it would be my recommendation to come back to you with something to put us in a better position so the playing field is not millions of dollars in debt. But I'm certainly welcome and optimistic that if you want us to take it all back to bargaining, that's fine too. It's going to be much more difficult on those bargaining teams to make decisions early in the process that don't give people enough notice about next year. But that is still an option.
Mr. Laney.
Would it be possible for us to have another executive session at the next meeting to discuss this in detail or with more information or anything like that?
It's possible.
Okay.
Mrs. Mature, I haven't really heard from you, if I could, about.
So what sorts of, when we talked about data decisions, when Mrs. Bacon brought that up, what sorts of additional information could we have gathered before our next meeting, or if there needs to be an additional study session or something like that? where more data could be provided to us prior to the next meeting? Is that something that is possible? And what sorts of information could we be gathering that would help with this? Because I don't like the idea of having to push this on and not having, even though some of these changes could come, pushing off all of the decisions until, April and May, and having no idea when we know for sure there is going to be many cuts to come up with this, I think it's putting everyone then at risk and unnoticed in order for us to meet the timeline. So I don't like the idea of kicking it down that far. And saddling the new board with when they don't have all of the information. And I think that's a hard way to start that off, as difficult as the decision is for us now. But I would like to know, again, what sorts of information can we have gathered to get some of those data points that Mrs. Bacon was talking about, and if it might be possible to do some sort of study session or something, if that's something that others may think is would be appropriate.
I do have a question time-wise. We only have one board meeting in December.
Correct.
And to get a study session in before then with the holiday, it's really tough. And then there's PV Pulse, and there's this, we've got a lot coming up, this student voice. But is it possible to have a second board meeting in December? I know, Julie. I'm sorry, you're just shaking your head. I just don't know how it's possible to get it in. I was looking at the calendar a few minutes ago, and because it's December 1st, it makes it really tough. So could we call a special board meeting? I don't know how we're gonna get around it. We'd have to have a study session, and I just don't know how you can gather data and not, I don't know.
I'm staying in town the whole time, so I'll meet any day.
I mean, here's the thing that, it is tough, but it's our job. So we're going to have to do it. I mean, even I, who don't really want to go beyond December 1st of the meeting, am willing to do that. I mean, I think there's, to me, it seems like we need some information around discipline, what is happening at the sites. I think we need some information around achievement, and scores, where we are with our mimics. That might be helpful information for us to have.
Some of that was already planned to be shared at the December 8th study session that's already scheduled.
Right. So that could be good. We could have a meeting after that. I think there are things that we can do that will help us better understand. I would like to see some sort of survey go to parents and employees, so that we have that data that we can take care of. I mean, we just said we're getting rid of Hanover though, so I don't know what the survey is going to look like, but
Oh, next year.
okay, that's not till next year.
Yeah,
Good.
they're not available.
Okay. But I think there's a couple of data points that we can pull and really dedicate that. We're all going to be here December 8th. We've made that commitment. So maybe we can look at that as a time to really dig into some of this information.
To be a little bit on the facetious side, I wish there was a money tree. I don't know how else to say it.
I agree.
But that's what we need. Sorry.
Mrs. Greenberg?
Yeah, I agree with what Mrs. Bacon was saying. I think another data point that would be helpful is, we're looking at these line items as just numbers. And is there any way to give us more information? I mean, obviously, the sense of increasing class size was going to produce a reduction of 29 FTEs. Where, I mean, how is that figured? Where? And what are the numbers based on? Because, I know we make presumptions about enrollment in class sizes, and this is one of those because it's for the coming year. So if we can just get a little bit more of an idea, because I think at least 3 of us have talked about, is there a hybrid solution that we can come up with? And I think those data points are important to know.
When you say a hybrid solution, are you suggesting that some class sizes increase?
Potentially. I mean,
Not specific class sizes, but, do we put those to, I'm not gonna even say it out loud, one set of students as opposed to every
So we
K-12.
differentiate our staffing right now. The schools that have been previously labeled D have additional staffing. And we haven't changed those, right? Because they still need the supports. We can't just walk away just because they demonstrated improvement 1 year, right?
Right.
So, but from a staffing perspective, it's important that we have consistent language that applies. This is the equal. We're trying to do some equitable things, but there is also an equal component because people want to know what's the formula, why are you staffing our school differently than another school? So we
And
can't.
I'm not suggesting that we I'm not suggesting these 3 K-6s increase their class size and these don't. I'm talking about K-12, 7, 8. I mean, K-6, 7, 8,
So,
9, 12.
you asked a very good question, both of you, regarding where are those numbers? And I can give you just a couple examples and maybe call on Dr. Holmes. The 29 FTE, about 12 of them are at the elementary level and the rest are at the secondary level. When you look at changing 1 to the class size staffing ratio at the 7-12 level, it has a very different impact than it does at the elementary. Changing the high school from 29 on the staffing ratio to 30 at Pinnacle High School will eliminate 4 FTE approximately on 2,500 kids. That's 20 sections that they will then have to plan to remove from their master schedule. At Paradise Valley High School on the block schedule, they'll probably have to remove about 3 FTE or such. All right, that's still for them 18 or 12 to 18 sections that they have to take out. But at the elementary level, it varies because we certainly have staffing allocations, 25 kinder, 26, 27, 28, 29, right? We have these variations as the grade levels go up. But of the 12 that in the staffing model, and these are just best guess projections, right? Using current enrollment, rolling those numbers up into projections, they vary. But a couple examples that maybe I could call on Dr. Holmes to give us can you think of an example of your elementaries when you did the model that changed? Because if there were 12 classrooms, I remember you telling me 12 different sites would lose a teacher because of the staffing model change. Can you give me an example what that means at that school?
Sure. I did take, and Ms. Matura actually was getting at that much earlier in the evening, but I did take a look at what that impact would look like at a couple of our schools. And the first one was a first grade classroom where the student teacher ratio went from 21 to 28. And the second one was a 6th grade classroom where the student teacher ratio went from 22 to 33. And you're going to get, at the secondary level, when we do allocations, it's on a per student basis. So there's a spread, if you will, an even distribution across the populations. But at the elementary level, it comes down to dividing a small number of kids at a grade level by a ratio and then rounding up. So when you do this at the elementary level in the K-6, it is always going to be a dramatic raise for whichever grade level, whichever school is impacted, because it is always going to be that group that is right at the staffing ratio. And so as soon as you change it by 1, now the rounding changes and you're going to have a big jump in class sizes.
And I appreciate this information. I think this is the information that we need to talk about more so that there's an understanding of what this is actually going to do. Because when we talk about raising class size by 1, it's nebulous. It doesn't really give us the information that we need. So if we could have more information like that, on, whenever we talk about this again, I think that would be incredibly helpful for us to know.
Anyone final thoughts? Oh,
Look,
Mrs. Case?
I just said to Mrs. Bacon, from 21 students to 28 students, and you said that was
the first grade classroom.
that was a first grade class. Those are children who are trying to teach how to read. I mean, that is an enormous jump. And so those are the kind of things that we, like Mrs. Bacon said, you say one, but one doesn't mean one. One means over an average, and that's really hard. That is why we have worked for literally years to lower the class size. That is why we've worked on that. And we've had parents come to us frequently and talk about when we had a combined and what an impact it had on their children to go from a small classroom to a big. Nothing of this is easy in any shape or form. Thank you.
I have one final question. Did we give you enough information? I think we did.
Well, I'm hearing that you want to try to do something before the board changes. I'm hearing that you don't want to address necessary class size without having more information. I'm hearing that that you want some data on discipline and achievement. And those were already scheduled for the 8th. The challenge I have is helping you get the information, the conversation, and the potential action before the end of the semester. But I will be happy to work with the board president, identifying some dates and times and doing this as quickly as we can for you. I might also offer the opportunity for Ms. Berrigan and Dr. Holmes to reconvene the budget task force group at least one more time to have maybe their additional input before we come back to like a study session for you.
May I ask if any parents would be included on that or not, because they haven't had all the background information up until that point?
It's up to you. I mean, it's what you want me to do with that opportunity. I mean, there's pros and cons. And I'd be happy to, ask a parent to sit on it.
It's just that comment was made tonight, so.
Okay, I think I'll find somebody.
When you met with the budget task force throughout this, did you give them the scenario that it could go from 21 to 28 in that did they hear that we just heard tonight?
I don't recall we had that level of specificity. So I would be speculating to.
Because when you say plus, one increase, that is something totally different than when you gave us the story of 21 to 28.
So for example, one of the things that we talked about was this notion of at the elementary levels. One of the things that I normally expect to see in a normal year when we staff our schools at the elementary level, all things being equal, no surprises, whatever the staffing ratio is, I would expect that our average class size around our elementary schools is approximately 3 below that number. So if we're staffing at 25-1, the average class size at kindergarten is going to be around 22. You are going to have classrooms that are at 25, but on average, it's probably at 22, and you're going to have some, because that's, an average, it's going to be lower than that. So we had conversations like that. So kind of embedded in that conversation is this notion of there's greater variability at the elementary level. But your specific question is did we tackle that example? And we did not tackle that specific example.
And it's really compounded when if you change the staffing formula, even just by one, because we're already going to see a change in staffing allocations when promoted enrollment is less at one grade level going into the next, and the number for that new grade level is different. So if first grade is going from 26 to 27, but that kindergarten class rolling up is going to go from 4 sections to 3 sections because of that now, because it's not just 27, it's 28. We had the roll up because it changed with our current model, but then we add one to it, it's 2. So it does get complicated, and it's the best we can do with what the data that we have. But it's likely to see people will be shocked, right? As we right size our staffing to be commensurate with our enrollment. And we were slow to do that over the last couple of years. I mean, that's part of what we did with those expenditures is, we added TV Connect. We staffed our schools anticipating that the 1,500 kids were going to come back, and they didn't. And then we lost more than that. So we've been reducing our staffing, particularly on the certified side, because that's where we have formulas, right? We only have one principal per school. It doesn't matter whether that school is 300 or 800. There's one principal. But in the staffing formula for certified, we have bargain language that adjusts based on the size of that class in that school. So when we staffed for those in 21, 22, we did provide employment for people, new positions we added. Think about what we added in 21, 22. So we added new positions. We kept people because we thought the kids were going to come back. They didn't. And so it's been compounding, right, because of the declining enrollment and the things that the decisions that we made to support our teachers and our students. As I said earlier, we have to have that same conversation, whether we could have done it and should have done it, 2 years ago in that budget planning process. We're going to have to do it now. But I think I have enough information to try to pull together the information you need for a continued conversation with the intent that there's a recommendation with this board before the end of the semester. Is that right? Okay. We'll try to get it scheduled all out and communicate that to all of our stakeholders as soon as possible.
Okay, before we adjourn, I would like to remind you that our next regular board meeting, as scheduled right now, will be held on Thursday, December 1st, 2022 at 7 p.m. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.